Hi, if you want to watch exclusive content with hot girls that you won't watch on YouTube, namely where Naruto roasts Kushina and Mikoto and many other hot girls without restrictions, then visit my Boosty channel at the link in the description.
Well, where am I going to put my gear now? My bag is torn. The noisy blonde began to wail throughout the forest, not at all embarrassed by Sasuke's offer to shut up and Sakura's threat to kill. Kakashi suggested simply wrapping the kunai in something, since it wasn't long to the village anyway, and threw him some rag. Uzumaki wanted to be indignant, but remembering how Haruno had slammed him into the ground the last time, he decided it would be better to remain silent. "Sensei, where did you put my cloak?" the girl asked soon. "This one, Sakura-chan?" Uzumaki realized. "Naruto." Sakura's loud cry thundered throughout the forest. "Were you carrying a cat in there?" "No, I wrapped the kunai in it," Uzumaki answered carelessly, and without thinking, added, "Meow." "Idiot. If you want to be a cat, I'll arrange it for you." This time the kunoichi decided not to use her fists, henge. A second later, instead of the 16-year-old boy, there was a pile of clothes and a cloud of smoke, from which emerged a blonde cat with blue eyes, shaking its head in confusion. Kakashi, afraid that he would now have to work hard for two, rushed to the newly made cat and tried to dispel henge. But Haruno was very talented. Not only did the sensei fail, but this furry nightmare grabbed his mask and almost tore it off. Then the accomplice in the crime handed it over to Sakura, that is, shoved the cat into her hands, announcing, "It's time for me to get lost on the road of life," and disappeared in a cloud of smoke. At that moment, the kunoichi already regretted what she had done. The cute cat bit all her hands and was already threatening to grab her hair. Sasuke, who had been standing aside and watching what was happening with wild laughter, finally decided to intervene and tore the furry beast away from the girl. Finding himself in the Uchiha's hands, the cat bit his finger, glared angrily and hissed. But after a second he calmed down, pressed his ears, and quietly meowed, began to lick the brunette's bitten finger. The guys were stunned, but now at least someone appeared who was not in danger of being torn apart by Naruto the cat. "I had to go to the fifth with this problem." She praised Sakura for her successful technique, but she couldn't remove it, or rather, she didn't want to, secretly glad that this blonde, impudent upstart got what he deserved, and said that it would pass in a week or two. Until then, someone had to take Naruto in. The saddest thing for the Uchiha was that the cat clung to him with a death grip, apparently sensing his offender, and it was impossible to tear him away. That's what they decided on. Naru would live with Sasuke for now, he was probably lonely in the huge house anyway. And under his brave curses, the women pushed the brunette out of the office. When Uchiha came home, it turned out that there were even more problems. The cat let go of him and began to explore the house. As a result, he had to say goodbye to the family dinnerware and favorite curtains. He did not want to eat on the floor, so he jumped on Sasuke's lap and stole food from his plate, or climbed onto the table, sweeping away all the dishes. And these were the least of the problems. Everything would be fine, but sometimes Uchiha saw him not as Naruto the cat, but as Naruto the person. It had been 3 days since the unexpected lodger had appeared in Sasuke's house, and the brunette had already gotten used to it. And now the Uchiha was sitting quietly on the couch and studying the scroll with the new technique. The cat, apparently, got bored, and he jumped onto the brunette's lap and rubbed his head against his stomach, demanding attention. Sasuke continued reading and absent-mindedly stroked the cat's head. Suddenly, he caught himself not understanding what was written in the scroll for a long time, but imagining that it was not the cat, but Naruto the man who had laid his head on his lap, whose hair he was combing. Stunned by his thoughts, the Uchiha literally jumped up to the ceiling, hitting the top of his head painfully on it. "What am I thinking?" Uchiha was frightened by his own thoughts. "It's a cat. And even more so Naruto. I don't like him at all," the brunette lamented. "Then I thought, well, I don't really like it. Well, only if he were such a nice person." Sasuke felt himself rapidly turning blue, just like his old childhood t-shirt. I wonder if he will remember what happened later, or will he also forget about the cat's life, like he did now about the human's life? Uchiha wondered. "Okay, let's try again." Sasuke approached the offended cat and picked him up. He thought about it for a moment, and then hugged him. The cat purred contentedly and began to lick the brunette's cheek with its rough tongue. The Uchiha almost fainted, imagining Naruto in the cat's place again. And when the cat licked his ear, Sasuke couldn't stand it, and leaving him, he ran to the bathroom. A brunette with crazy eyes and pink cheeks looked at him from the mirror. "Damn it!" Sasuke yelled and stuck his head under the stream of cold water from the tap. It immediately became clear in his head. Uchiha realized that he simply hadn't thought about Naruto in this sense, he simply couldn't imagine it, but that's how it turned out. "Okay, we'll see," he said sadly to his reflection and, wiping his hair, wandered into the kitchen. So, it's been 10 days since Naruto became a cat. All these days Uchiha felt like a nanny and asked to give him a task as soon as possible. And now Sasuke had to go on a mission, leaving Naruto alone until the evening. He was already looking forward to a whole day of rest. The brunette thought, and decided to lock the cat in the house. After all, he would do something else, and then he would have to clean it up. Uchiha returned from the mission wet and angry. Not only did he slip right in front of the enemy, and the Chidori sank into the ground, making not only his opponents but also his team laugh at him. As a result, Kakashi's team interrupted them, rolling with laughter, but it also started raining in buckets, ruining his carefully styled hair. Already at the house, the brunette, to top it all off, tripped and hit his chin on the steps. Having inserted and set his jaw, Sasuke pulled the door handle. Locked. What did you expect? That a cat would open it? The key was neither in his pockets nor in his bag. He had to pick out the keyhole with a kunai. Forgive me, Uchiha did not wear hairpins, although they would have suited him. The house was suspiciously quiet. All the things were in their places, only the cat was missing. Uchiha first checked the kitchen, namely the refrigerator. Noting with satisfaction that no one had attempted to take the week's supply of tomatoes, he began to inspect the other rooms. Almost nothing had changed in the bedroom, only he now had only one pillow. After crying and paying homage to the dead pillow, the brunette moved to the bathroom. Oddly, the toilet paper was in its place, not lying in a pile of paper strips near the toilet. No one was jumping at his feet from under the bathtub, and the shower curtain was hanging on all its loops. The flower in the corridor also did not suffer from the teeth and paws of the tailed monster, i.e. it was not gnawed more than in the morning. But then suspicious sounds came from the basement. Clenching a kunai in his fists, Uchiha descended into the darkness. In the basement, having bypassed all the traps, in front of the safe with the clan's secrets, a cat was hanging a meter from the ground, entangled in wire. How did he bypass the traps? He didn't step on the pressure plate with arrows flying out of the holes in the walls, he didn't fall into the pit with spears, he didn't touch the stretched wire that set the pendulum axis in motion, but he only got entangled in the wire stretched like a web. Sasuke was furious. Having freed the choking cat from his bonds, the brunette grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and threw him out the door into the rain, noting along the way that the door should still be fixed. Uchiha remembered about the cat only when it started scratching the door from the other side. The brunette opened the door, and a finely trembling wet lump appeared before his eyes, meowing pitifully. Tears seemed to flow from his blue eyes from such injustice. Sasuke took the injured Naruto in his arms, got a towel from the bathroom, dried it and wrapped the cat in it. Dry and languid from the warmth, the cat fell asleep, and for the first time Uchiha did not chase him out of bed. He imagined Naruto the man curled up on his blanket too vividly. So the boy fell asleep, hugging the contentedly purring cat. Sasuke woke up because he was hot, too hot. Judging by the sensations, the daytime sun was already scorching. Oh well. The Uchiha, in a light half-sleep, buried his nose in the cat's warm fur. Wait, when did it grow so long? The boy immediately felt that he was hugging the cat much lower than the length of the cat's body, and under his fingers there was not fluffy fur, but warm skin. And it was clearly not the sun that was warming him. Sasuke opened his eyes and saw. Sasuke saw that he was hugging Naruto, this guy, in person. The Uchiha was quietly melting with joy, feeling his mouth spread into a stupid smile of a mentally retarded person, and then he thought to look under the blanket. Oh my god, the brunette could only say 3 words. He had already forgotten that Uzumaki was left without clothes, and now he had to pay for his forgetfulness. Sasuke began to understand the full difficulty of his situation. In his bed, Naruto was lying completely naked, and was pressed against him. Uchiha's nose was bleeding. The situation was becoming more and more interesting. It became even hotter in his clothes, and the brunette's pants suddenly became tight. Overcoming his wild desire, Sasuke decided not to shock the blonde for now, and tried to at least move away from him. But the matter was complicated by the fact that Uzumaki wrapped his arms around the brunette's neck and pressed himself even closer to him. The Uchiha felt himself turning red as a tomato. Damn, how hot. Why was he sleeping in just shorts? And then the blonde man unhooked himself from him and started to wake up. He sleepily rubbed his eyes, and seeing the Uchiha in front of him in a daze, he gasped and tried to quickly retreat. Bummer. He ran into a wall and hurried to merge with it, which he didn't quite succeed in doing. Wow, kitty, Sasuke said dreamily, looking at the blonde in fascination. And there was something to look at, a tanned, toned body, slightly covered with a blanket, a still sleepy, but no less beautiful face with 3 stripes on each cheek, eyes sparkling with surprise, the color of the summer sky, disheveled light hair and a pair of cat ears on the head, along with a long tail sticking out from under the blanket. What the hell am I doing in your house? The angelic creature interrupted the brunette's dreams with a piercing scream. Better ask what you're doing in my bed looking like that, Uchiha grinned. The brunette noted with satisfaction that Naruto blushed like a poppy from such a remark and pulled the blanket higher. Uzumaki did not understand why he did not want to yell at Sasuke now, and why his body was burning so much, just from the burning gaze of shiny black eyes. All this defied any explanation. The sight of Sasuke's eyes lowered in embarrassment and his lips being bitten completely blew his mind. Uchiha grabbed Naruto by the shoulders and pushed him onto the bed, sitting on his hips. Sasuke, team. What are you doing? Uzumaki was indignant, but immediately fell silent when the brunette ran his fingers through his hair and moved his face close to his, so that their foreheads touched. Kitty, Sasuke exhaled with pleasure. What the hell kind of kitty am I to you? The blonde was indignant, but he had to shut up again when Uchiha tactfully pointed his finger to the side at his cat tail, making him blush even more. Meanwhile, Sasuke began to move on to more decisive actions. He covered Naruto's lips with his own, and penetrated the limp blonde's mouth with his tongue. Uzumaki himself did not understand why he gave in to Sasuke's caresses so easily, but the desire of his body was too strong. And the brunette continued active actions. He began to study the blonde's mouth, sometimes biting his lips, intertwining their tongues, and broke away from Naruto only when they both were already short of air. Then he moved slightly to the side, laying a chain of kisses from the neck and below, sometimes leaving spots of hickeys. He squeezed the bead of a nipple with his lips, causing Naruto to sigh loudly, went lower, diving his tongue into the hollow of the navel, and even lower, throwing aside the unnecessary blanket. Naruto moaned from the unprecedented pleasure that melted his entire body, still blushing from shame, and closing his eyes from pleasure, and then he felt something wet on his member. He opened his eyes wide in amazement, and a loud moan escaped from his throat when Sasuke took his excited flesh into his mouth and began to do something incredible. When the Uchiha felt that Naruto was already at the limit, he released his member from his mouth, causing a moan of disappointment from the blonde. Do you want it, kitty? Sasuke asked, spreading the blonde's legs and wetting his fingers with saliva. Damn, I'll be a kitty, a bunny, whatever, just keep going, this. The Uchiha smirked and inserted the first finger into Naruto, immediately receiving curses. You asked for it yourself, kitty, Sasuke answered, gradually adding his fingers and stretching the blonde. Tears came to Uzumaki's eyes from the sharp pain, but the brunette wiped them away with his free hand. When Naruto was prepared enough, the Uchiha took out his fingers and threw the blonde's legs over his shoulders. Relax, and it won't hurt so much, he warned, and began to enter slowly. This pain was worse than the previous one, and Sasuke gave Naruto time to get used to the new sensations before he started moving. At first, Uzumaki was in pain, but then his whole body was seized by a sweet spasm of pleasure. He arched unconsciously, asking for more, and the brunette continued moving, listening to the blonde's moans. Soon, both felt that they could not take it anymore, and arched towards each other, sharing an orgasm, one for both of them. When the boys came to their senses, Naruto laid his head on Sasuke's chest. Sasuke. You know. When I became a cat, I forgot that I was a human. And only to you did I feel an inexplicable attraction. I liked your warmth, which would not change, no matter what form I was in." Well, what a phrase Uzumaki came up with. "Yeah, but what are we going to do about it?" Sasuke asked, tugging at the cat's ear. "This will probably pass soon too," the blonde replied, reaching out to the Uchiha's face and rubbing his striped cheek against the brunette's. "In 3 days. Team Kakashi gathers for a mission at the village gates." "Sasuke-kun, why didn't Naruto come to the mission? He seemed to promise that he would definitely come today." Sakura asked the Uchiha. "Well, he had some problems," the brunette answered evasively, rubbing his cheek, red from the slap. At the same time, at Sasuke's house. "How dare that bastard use me like that?" Naruto yelled, rubbing his butt. "Now I'll be hobbling around for 3 days. And let him just try not to marry me after that." So, 2 years have passed since that memorable night. A lot has happened in that time. The ears and tail disappeared a few days later, to the great grief of Uchiha and the great joy of Uzumaki. First, the boys started dating, and then Sasuke took Naruto to live with him, and the most compelling argument was the fact that Uchiha had a double bed and free access to a refrigerator full of food, and the cockroaches had already begun to actively drive out the owner of the apartment. Sasuke returned home from a long mission, but he was not allowed to rest peacefully. First of all, the water was turned off, and it was desperately needed. Who can feel normal after returning from the land of wind, with their pants full of sand? Secondly, okay, the sand was somehow shaken out, combed out of the hair and no longer creaks in the teeth. But why the hell are the walls in the hallway now orange, and on one of them there is some mutant drawn? And Naruto had nothing to do, and he decided to revive the interior, bringing bright colors into everyday life, and even tried to draw Kyubi. To be honest, this tailed thing on the wall was 20 times scarier than the fox. Thirdly, Naruto himself. And it all started so well, the brunette thought when the late Uzumaki flew into the door he had opened and almost knocked him down. "Sasuke, huh, Sasuke," he screamed, throwing himself on his neck. "What do you want?" Uchiha asked without interest, moving towards the sofa and dragging Uzumaki, who clung to him with a death grip. "And I was chosen as the 6th Hokage." He yelled into the brunette's ear, and seriously deafened him for a couple of hours. Flashback. "Tsunade-ba-chan, what happened?" Naruto asked, running to the urgent call of the 5th, and now he was turning his head, trying to see the woman behind the mountains of papers. "Naruto," the 5th began solemnly, throwing piles of waste paper off the table and hiding an unfinished bottle of sake behind her back. "I'm sick to death of, that is, it's time for me to leave the post of Hokage, and to replace myself, as the most stupid, that is, ambitious. I have chosen you." With a quick movement of her hand, Tsunade slammed the Hokage hat onto the stunned blonde's head, and with a cry of "Shizune, let's grab the treasury and run to the casino while he's not looking," the woman tried to disappear with a heavy chest in her hands. But at the door she changed her mind, and, pulling out a hidden box of sake from under the table, she was gone. And Uzumaki remained standing in the middle of the office with a blissful expression on his face. End flashback. Congratulations. What? Has the 5th completely lost all her brains? How are you going to manage the village? I wouldn't trust you to even take us to breakfast. Sasuke was furious. And one more thing, Naruto drawled, stretching his mouth into a smile from ear to ear, ignoring the Uchiha screams. Haven't you forgotten? Didn't forget what? Sasuke was shocked. Someone promised me that as soon as we were 18, he would do something for his kitty, Uzumaki purred affectionately, pressing Uchiha against the wall and blocking the escape routes. Maybe we shouldn't, the brunette pleaded pitifully and tried to make kawaii eyes, which he did well, by the way. Then I'll throw this away. Uzumaki waved a colorful bag that he had snatched out of nowhere in front of Sasuke's face. You wouldn't dare. The brunette rushed at him and snatched the bag with the inscription Nekamimi from his hands. I stood in line for this at the anime store for half a day. And pulling out his treasure, cat ears and a tail, he pressed them to his chest with affection. This is your Hokage's order, and it is not up for discussion. Uzumaki shouted loudly, putting an end to this conversation. Uchiha's jaw dropped to the floor from such impudence. Naruto picked her up from the floor and sang sweetly, "The wedding is in a week. the invitations have already been sent. Oh, this wedding saying. Nanny? The Uchiha's ringing voice deafened Konoha. 6 days before the wedding. Preparations for the wedding were in full swing, and the guys only had time to accept congratulations and run from one end of Konoha to the other to be everywhere. Well, to be more precise, only Sasuke was running. Naruto sent shadow clones to several places at once, and he himself calmly lazed around, which threatened to beat him up by his fiancée. Uchiha found out about this trick completely by accident, when he cornered Naruto right in the fitting room. Imagine his surprise when, after a blow to the head for resisting lewd sexual acts, the object of passion simply disappeared, with a quiet poof. And Sasuke had only just gotten to the most interesting part. On the way home, the Sharingan decided to teach the cat a lesson, and that same evening a convenient opportunity presented itself. As soon as the sound of running water was heard from the bathroom, Sasuke made his way to his cat with a crooked smile. "Sasuke, since you're here, rub my back," Uzumaki rejoiced, having already forgotten about today's events, hearing the creak of the door opening. But instead of a pleasant scratching of his back with a soft sponge, he received a blow to the head with an iron ladle. What a stroke of luck! Really, was all Narek had time to think before he passed out. When he came to, he found himself leaning against the wall, his mouth taped shut, his hands behind his back and tied with the same tape to the valves, so that any careless movement resulted in the water flowing alternately, now scalding with boiling water, now dousing with ice-cold water. "You'll learn how to be lazy and send clones with me." Uchiha stared at him, flashing a smile with a full set of teeth. With a battle cry, "Sasuke the Avenger has returned." Uchiha fucked Naruto 5 times, fortunately liquid soap was always at hand, and the water pouring from above drowned out the dissatisfied moans of the blonde with its noise. Having decided that his soul was satisfied, the brunette freed the exhausted cat, and with a light soul and a clear, almost, conscience went to sleep. Naruto, after some time, having come to his senses, decided that he even liked it, only it annoyed him that he had no freedom of action, and his ass hurt more than usual. With the thought, "I am taking revenge, and my revenge is terrible," Uzumaki moved towards the bedroom, where the unsuspecting brunette was peacefully sleeping. "Well, now let's play by my rules," Naruto grinned, leaning over the now defenseless brunette. 5 days before the wedding. "Well, now let's play by my rules," Naruto grinned, leaning over the now defenseless brunette, and... well, he couldn't do anything with Sasuke, who was so cute at that moment. Uchiha was calmly snoring through 2 holes and drooling on the pillow. Uzumaki was touched, and decided to take a couple of photos as a keepsake. And then an idea came to his mind. With a satisfied smile on his lips, taking his camera with him, Naruto headed to the recently built 24-hour shopping center in the center of the village, and Grandma Tsunade was right in thinking that the achievements of technology would be useful in Konoha too. "I'd like to order a t-shirt to please my fiancé," he asked an unhealthy-looking guy, entering the department with the sign "Your photo" on a t-shirt. So, Sasuke woke up. The morning sun was warming him, the birds were chirping outside the window, and no one was snoring in his ear. Bliss. But he was not allowed to sleep longer. Only when he noticed that Uchiha began to wince in his sleep, Naruto, who had been waiting for him for a long time, jumped onto the bed. Having comfortably settled on the brunette's hips, he began to jump on him like a horse, and Sasuke, without thinking twice, grabbed him by the waist. This is what Hatake Kakashi found them doing, having jumped into the window at such an inopportune moment. Actually, he was supposed to tell the 6th Hokage that the 5th, who had to step into the post of head of the village again during the guy's wedding and honeymoon, demands that the unfortunate groom, or bride, he was supposedly the one below, be delivered to her. Kakashi stood there for a minute, waiting for someone to pay attention to him, and blushed more and more, because the illustrations for Ichi threatened to appear before him in real life. When the boys changed positions and Sasuke started to pull Naruto's shirt off and give him hickeys on his neck, Hatake tactfully coughed. The guys jumped up and rushed at the troublemaker. "Chidori. Rasengan. Idiots, I'm one of us." These were the last words of the sensei for today, as the lovers had done their best, and the jounin was now lying on the floor, counting the stars. Why did he come? Uzumaki thought to ask. What difference does it make? We need to drag him away from here. The overexcited Uchiha became nervous. "Oh, come on," Narek waved his hand, "better look at what a present I have for you." And throwing a bag at the brunette, he ran out of the room. A minute later, a very pleased Sasuke stumbles into the kitchen in a dark blue t-shirt with the inscription "Sex Monster." Apparently Naruto really liked it that time. But from the sight of the blonde, who opened his arms to meet him, Uchiha slides down the wall to the floor in quiet shock. Uzumaki pulled on a bright orange t-shirt with a huge photo of himself taken when Sasuke was sleeping. And an equally large inscription, "I love my Sharingan miracle." Before his thoughts had time to settle, Naruto immediately fussed around the stunned brunette, muttering something about choosing a cake for the wedding. Needless to say, the tasting of sweets turned into a cake fight, and after returning home, Naruto once again scolded himself for his pliability when he peeled himself off the cream-stained sheets. By the way, they still chose a cake. 4 days before the wedding. Time was running out, and it was necessary to take care of outfits for the future newlyweds. The boys spent the morning choosing clothes. As a result of a whole day spent in the best studio in Konoha, several things became clear. 1. Uchiha flatly refused to choose anything other than a classic black suit. He explained that this thing symbolizes the mournfulness of the situation, and represents his farewell to freedom. Fortunately, the blonde did not hear him. 2. Naruto unexpectedly took Uchiha's joking suggestion to wear a dress seriously. Under Sasuke's wild cries of "Idiot, I was just joking," the blonde managed to involve the girls who had been peeping at them for a long time in the choice. 3. From the second came the third, all women are fools. Especially Sakura. Either kindness has awakened in her, or she has dreamed of mocking Uzumaki like this her whole life. While he and Ino were arguing over what style would suit Naruto, and Hinata was lying quietly unconscious not far from them, the blonde 6th Hokage pulled out a dress the color of baked milk from a pile of things, with sunflowers embroidered along the edges. Under the still protesting cries of the Uchiha, although not so much protesting anymore, the delighted girls dragged Uzumaki into the fitting room. They kicked the brunette out altogether, declaring that they had already chosen the dress, and the groom should not see the bride in a wedding dress before the wedding. Sasuke went home, thinking that his cat probably had a vixen inside it, not a fox. Deciding to take a walk, he wandered around the village, visiting the training ground where their Team 7 became Kakashi's students. Leaning against one of the pillars, he studied the clouds for a long time, and thought that running away from Oric was a pretty good idea. Although thoughts of marriage brought him an incomprehensible melancholy, and so he headed home, with the firm intention of drowning his sadness in wine. Meanwhile, the girls were working their magic on Naruto. They were pricking him with needles, adjusting the dress. At first, the blonde was indignant, but when Sakura suggested borrowing Hinata's bra and not bothering with adjusting it, it was unknown who became redder, Hyuga, who hugged herself, or Uzumaki, who felt that the idea with the dress was not as good as it seemed. Having suffered, Naruto trudged home, asking for the dress to be sent in a couple of days. At home, the blonde's fiancé was waiting for him, hugging a bottle. After some persuasion and bickering, Naruto agreed to drink a little bit. And it was not surprising that he soon became even more cheerful than Sasuke. By the way, what's up with Kakashi? He's been lying around in the bedroom closet for over a day and a half. Uchiha took care of that. True, he forgot about it because of the consequences of choosing the cake, and in vain. Hatake woke up. First thought, hooligans are depriving you of your sight. It turned out that it was a hanger that poked him in the eye, from which the jounin came to the conclusion that he was in the closet. Second thought, I'm hungry. The third thought didn't have time to come. Hearing footsteps in the room, Kakashi decided to see what was going on there. Fortunately, there were cracks in the closet. A brunette and a blonde entered the room, staggering and supporting each other. The two bodies collapsed on the bed and began to sluggishly move. When Naruto began to moan loudly and Sasuke began to whisper, "Kitty, I want you," Hatake became truly scared. Everything was happening a second time. Although, this did not stop him from continuing to peek. It was hard to see in the darkness, and he had the idea to look with the Sharingan. Question: how could you not notice the glowing red eye? Answer: no way. It was noticed. Sasuke, we have a Terminator in our closet, Uzumaki squeaked, looking out from under the Uchiha and glancing sideways at the closet. The brunette reluctantly stopped, wrapped himself in a sheet and armed himself with a sake bottle, and staggered towards the closet. "Come out, you vile coward," he yelled, banging the glass container on the cabinet. Kakashi carefully climbed out of the closet and crawled along the wall towards the window. "Who are you?" The dead drunk Uchiha stared at him. "Me?" Kakashi looked around in surprise. "I'm a hallucination." "You need to drink less," Hatake said, and, opening the window, he jumped out of it. Sasuke stood for a moment, digesting the information, and then, throwing the bottle over his shoulder like a club, in the manner of a caveman, he moved towards the bed, where the already bored blonde was waiting for him. And Kakashi was already running at full speed towards Irika's house, because he realized that he simply needed to confess something to him. Part 5. == 3 days before the wedding. Here is another morning of pre-holiday bustle in the newlyweds' house. Let's eavesdrop on their morning conversation. Sasuke, Naruto, have you thought about buying rings? Naruto, it's been a long time. Sasuke, so why haven't you told me yet? Naruto, waiting for you to remember. Inner voice, I knew it. If he remembers, it means he loves. Sasuke. Naruto, makes kawaii eyes. Sasuke, okay, let's go buy it quickly. Uchiha had to rake out stashes from all corners, and even from the safe with the inheritance. What kind of sum wouldn't you spend for Naruto's happiness? All this time, Uzumaki was spinning around him, trying to peek and find out the code to the safe. As a result, the blonde was knocked out, and, counting the stars, comfortably lay down on the floor. Meanwhile, having discovered that an impressive amount of money was missing, Sasuke saw a note stuck to the door. The note read, "You didn't think I fed your team ramen for free, did you? Love, your former sensei." P.S. and change the code, Shikamaru figured it out in 10 minutes. Promising himself that he would not mess with Kakashi again, the brunette raked a pile of money into his wallet, threw Naruto over his shoulder, and went to the jewelry store. The brunette wasn't particularly bothered by the strange looks they were giving him. He walked along, contentedly humming a song to himself, in a blissful mood. It was warm, light, and the flies weren't biting. What else did he need? Oh, and Naruto was hanging calmly on his shoulder instead of screaming at the top of his lungs. How beautiful. But Uchiha's dreams were brazenly interrupted. Now let go of brother Naruto. So, what's this little thing? Yeah, Konohamaru. Sasuke walked past, pretending not to notice the kid. But the kid wasn't going to give up. Either you give me your brother Naruto, or you will experience the power of my improved sexy jutsu. Uchiha zero attention. A second later, a completely naked girl appeared in front of him. This is where Uchiha got angry. Get out of here, you little brat. You know, I have every right to carry him around, or to paw at his ass. Which he did to prove his point. And why would that be? Konohamaru was indignant. His groom. The brunette yelled, and worried residents jumped out of the surrounding houses. But, having made sure that it was the Uchiha again, they calmed down and dispersed, and they had seen worse scenes in the past 2 years. Finally, Sasuke was able to continue on his way. Uchiha dropped Uzumaki in front of the door, and he, hitting his head on the step with the welcome mat, finally came to his senses and immediately ran to the trinkets shining on the display cases, without even giving the brunette a slap for such a rough method of transportation. In 3 hours. Sasuke, it won't come off, the blonde whined pitifully, trying to pull off the last ring he tried on. Dobe, don't pull like that, you'll lose a finger. Uchiha tried to calm him. The girl standing behind the counter had been laughing at these two for about 20 minutes. First, they argued for 2 hours about what metal the jewelry would be made of, and then they even got to the fineness numbers. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and suggested giving them liquid soap, or at least soaking it in water. It would slide off a wet finger with ease. To wet means, a smile appeared on Sasuke's face, not boding well. He hugged Naruto, who had almost given up in the fight with the ring, and led him to one of the sofas by the wall, obviously placed there for the stronger sex, waiting for their ladies. Having seated the blonde on the sofa, Sasuke knelt down in front of him, and thus blocked the other customer's view of what he was about to do. He brought Naruto's hand to his face, and running his tongue over the ill-fated ring, took the reddened blonde's finger into his mouth, and began to suck it erotically, generously wetting it with saliva, and Uchiha, it turns out, has no complexes. Uzumaki could not stand this spectacle with an open hint, threw his head back, and began to quietly moan from the Uchiha's incredibly arousing actions. At this point, even those visitors who couldn't care less about the unusual couple, former fugitive ninja plus 6th Hokage, turned their interested glances at them. When Sasuke had played enough, he pulled the unfortunate ring off with his teeth. "That's it?" Naruto's loud, disappointed sigh caused a response in the form of whispering from the same visitors, "Have you never seen such an exciting sight in public?" Sasuke spat the ring onto his palm. "What, you want it right here?" the brunette said, pretending to be surprised loudly. Only then did Uzumaki remember that they still hadn't chosen a ring. "Team. Don't ruin my reputation." The blonde, flushed with excitement and shame, shouted in Uchiha's face and ran headlong out of the store. Sasuke smiled contentedly and, approaching the dreamy saleswoman, placed this ring in front of her, next to the one he had already chosen and packed for himself. "Give me the same one, but one size bigger." At home, a debriefing awaited him, and he was evicted to the couch in another room. No matter how much Uchiha scratched at the bedroom door and whined, "Kitty, forgive me, I didn't mean to. Let me in, I want to ask for forgiveness. I promise you'll like it." The announcement of the boycott was unyielding. Part 6. == 2 days before the wedding. Sasuke was unable to sleep normally. The sofa, which had previously seemed very spacious and soft, suddenly turned out to be terribly uncomfortable. His legs didn't fit on it, so he had to either rest his knees on the back or hang them over the edge, and his pride wouldn't let him unfold the sofa, expecting to be called back to the bedroom any minute. Closer to the morning, sleep finally came, if this state could be called sleep. In the morning, the brunette felt like a skating rink had rolled over him during the night. His attempt to get up was cut short by a spring that had crawled out of the sofa and caught on his pants. After a short struggle, the score was 1 in favor of the spring. Uchiha sadly trudged to the bathroom, leaving a piece of pants as a trophy for the sofa that creaked victoriously. The morning began with a surprise. On the mirror hanging above the sink, written in red marker at the level of his forehead, was the words, "I forgive you." What a touching forgiveness right in the morning, but who will wash it off? The brunette grabbed a rag and began to rub the smooth surface furiously. But the writing did not wash off. It turned out that this was a tricky forgiveness that was supposed to be a shame for centuries, well, or until his first water procedures. At night, Naruto figured out how to color his wayward fiancé's forehead with a colored marker, even managed to turn the letters upside down so that they could be read in the mirror. Having washed off this graffiti, Sasuke headed towards the bedroom. "I'll take it not by force, but by attrition," the great conqueror decided, but he had to regretfully discard this plan. Uzumaki calmly settled down on the ill-fated sofa, sorting through some papers, miraculously not sitting on the spring already familiar to the brunette. Seeing the dissatisfied guy, he happily waved a pack of colored sheets. "We need to sign the invitations," Naruto announced in a loud voice. Haven't you already sent them out?" It was as if Uchiha had been hit over the head with a dusty sack. Well, how can I say?" The blonde feverishly searched for words of justification. "So you lied to me?" Sasuke grabbed his head dramatically and rolled his eyes. There was a sound of impact and Uzumaki flew to the floor. "And how the hell did the fox get it? Why are you silent, idiot?" Kyuubi's voice sounded, "Tell the truth, and maybe he'll pity you." "What do you mean?" Uzumaki didn't understand. "And you remember what happened last time, when you took his katana without permission? Remember, idiot?" Ninetailed screamed, clinging to the bars of the cage with his clawed paws. Flashback. "Darling, I'm not lying. She really did break herself. And you look so handsome today." Naruto blinked his eyes innocently and tried to move away from the topic. "And I'm always like this. Ugh, don't try to pull the wool over my eyes." How the hell could it break when it fell out of the closet? Uchiha almost gave in to the blatant flattery. I don't know, the blonde continued to deny. At least lie convincingly. It's covered in the same crap as the kitchen floor. Sasuke's eyes were all but flashing. Since when did your favorite tomatoes become crap? Uzumaki didn't immediately understand what exactly he said. Did you try to make a salad like that? The brunette was horrified. Yes, came a sincere confession. This morally killed Uchiha. Whoever did this to the tomatoes, in his opinion, deserved the death penalty. End flashback. Yes, I got it bad then, the guy thought, remembering how they tripped him and dragged him into the bedroom, introducing him to all the screw-ups along the way. That's not what I mean, growled the fox, losing patience. About what? Uzumaki was genuinely surprised. About what he did to you at night. Even I, the embodiment of evil, had to hide in the corner of the cage and cover my eyes and ears with my paws. I never thought that my next host would practice BDSM. Perverts. Hubie let go of the bars of the cage, covered his eyes with his paw and blushed. It was unusual, but... What? So you were also peeping? The blonde started to get hysterical. Where should I go? If only you would let me out just once, the fox began his song. No way. You'll do some bad things when you're free, and I'll have to clean up the mess. And since you haven't shown up yet, you have nothing to complain about. Naruto tried to shame the animal. He couldn't blush any further and, waving his tails, he threw his carrier further away from the cage. That's it, get out of here, your fiancé is waiting for you there. The tailed one drove Uzumaki away, and tell that lover of yours that I am still a fox, not a vixen. But he was such a sweet boy, the Ninetales voice sounded in the blonde's head when Naruto came to his senses. Have you come to your senses? Now confess. A sincere confession mitigates the punishment. Sasuke looked menacing, like an arbitrator, only the scales and the wig were missing. I admit, Naruto answered, prompted by the fox. And by the way, Hubie is a fox, not a vixen, although I don't know why you needed to know his gender. Uchiha twitched nervously. Wasn't he the first to doubt the fox's gender? Anyway, he had to sort out the invitations. Out of the corner of his eye, Sasuke noticed that the blonde had hidden several of them, smiling unkindly. By evening, both of their arms were hurting like crazy, and why the hell write so much? The whole village would come to watch anyway, but no, the Hokage wanted to notify every villager personally. And he handed over the invitations with shadow clones. Late in the evening, Naruto literally fell into the Uchiha's arms. Sasuke laid the sleeping blonde on the bed, covered him with a blanket, and, unable to resist the temptation, admired him. Uzumaki was probably already dreaming about something, because he wrinkled his nose comically and smacked his lips. The brunette smiled and kissed his kitty on the temple. He lay down next to him and hugged Naruto, burying his nose in his hair. Just think, soon this sunny miracle will belong only to him. And maybe getting married is not such a bad idea? Sasuke finally thought about the wedding with quiet joy, and not with the melancholy that, as it turned out, was generated by doubts. Part 7. One day before the wedding. Really? Konoha, early morning. Birds are singing, clouds are floating, in general, an idyll. Kitty, wake up, Sasuke wakes up his beloved Naru. Just 5 more minutes, the blonde mumbles sleepily and hugs the pillow. Where should I pour your coffee, on the pillow or on the blanket? A gentle threat in response. Uzumaki opened one eye with difficulty, and, indeed, saw Uchiha by the bed with a tray in his hands. He blinked a couple of times, driving away this wonderful vision, but it did not disappear. Hot coffee, a rose next to the cup and a croissant on a plate? Darling, are you sick? Naruto asked with feigned surprise. It's not a bagel, it's a croissant, the brunette corrected him. Why not waffles? The guy who felt free was indignant. Eat, or I'll shove this down your collar. Sasuke put the tray on the bed. F vivo fido frac fefi fermin? Uzumaki asked, while trying to chew the whole, what's it called, croissant stuffed into his mouth. And this is a hint to you on how you should wake me up after the wedding and until old age, Sasuke explained unambiguously. Yeah, right, you'll get it. The blonde became completely brazen and began to lick his sweet fingers, not thinking about what could provoke the Uchiha. Some people have a button, or switch, depending on the person, that starts everything up with a half turn. So, Sasuke mentally pressed it, and without thinking about the consequences, he moved dangerously close to Uzumaki. You're so cute this morning. He whispered in the ear of the guy who brought the cup to his mouth. The blonde choked on his coffee and spilled it all over himself. Your mother, how hot. Naruto howled. Let me help you, Uchiha whispered passionately, and, putting the tray on the floor, moved closer to Uzumaki, intending to pull his t-shirt off. No, not in the morning, the blonde drawled whinily. Now you'll satisfy your libido, then you'll lock yourself in the bathroom for 3 hours, and forget about me, and anyway, my head hurts. Sasuke was stunned into silence. Naruto was screwing him over for the umpteenth time. What was going on? Taking advantage of the fact that the brunette had fallen into a light coma, Uzumaki slipped through. Passed him by and was gone. A few minutes later, Uchiha heard a muffled scream and a quiet muttering. The brunette rushed to the door, but someone kicked it down, pinning the guy to the floor with it, and no less than a herd of elephants walked over him. A second later, he was lifted up, and someone's footprint was carefully wiped from his face. Don't resist, or we'll have to take you away by force, understand? Sakura put her hand on Uchiha's shoulder and squeezed it hard, making it clear that it was useless to resist, and for greater persuasiveness she shook her fist in front of his face. Sasuke swallowed, turned pale and nodded in agreement, not wanting to get acquainted with Haruno's heavy hand. Where are you taking me? Uchiha began to quietly panic. Where to? To the bachelor party, of course. Lee spoke up. If so, does that mean there are only guys? Sasuke asked, clarifying. You didn't guess, the pink-haired girl bared her teeth in a nasty smile. Since you are an unusual couple, you won't spend your last day of freedom like normal people. Besides, the girls and I also want to have fun. In short, everything has already been decided for you. The guys decided to split up, so Naruto, who was stuffed into a bag, was already dragged away by Kiba, Neji, Shino, Tenten, and a red Azabite Hinata, and Sasuke was taken away by Sakura, Ino, Lee, Shikamaru, Choji, and Sai. Uzumaki was dangling in a dusty sack, tied hand and foot, and was already despairing of getting out of it. But then the shaking stopped and he was thrown to the ground. A moment later, he was pulled out of the sack and put on his feet. They stole him. They dragged him into the deep forests. Save me, Ii. Naruto screamed when he saw a dense forest around him. But he was finished off by a loud cry of surprise. The guys vied with each other to explain to the stunned blonde what was going on here and why all this was done. The blonde boy was a little sad at first about being separated from Sasuke, but he immediately put his trademark smile on his face and dashed with lightning speed to the piled-up bags, which, by the way, were much cleaner than the one they were dragging him in. The same story was happening with Uchiha, but on the other side of the forest. The outdoor party was declared open. The grooms did not yet know what surprise their friends had prepared for them. When the sun began to set, tragically, both companies were already quite tipsy. What they brought in those bags was definitely not equipment. Tsunade sat in the Hokage's office, sadly thinking about how she wouldn't be retiring anytime soon. A fireball flew over the treetops, and the woman sighed sadly. Well, even Uchiha is having fun, and I have to sit here and sort out papers. And how did this little thing manage to stock up on alcohol, when they only stole 2 boxes from me? With these words, she once again checked the contents of the hatch in the floor under the rug. Tsunade-sama, what did you say? Shizune, who had entered at the wrong time, was horrified. I'm saying that tomorrow I'll have to pump out and treat the youth for a hangover. The fifth rolled her eyes and smiled dreamily, remembering how she partied in her younger years with Jiraiya and Orochimaru. So, the guys stocked up on alcohol thoroughly, and in the midst of the fun they decided to carry out their evil, but no less stupid plan. Sasuke was desperately trying to get into Lee's pants, cursing and promising that he wouldn't lose the bet with Sayu and would put that green rag on himself. Choji and Ino were already snoring peacefully under the tree, and it seemed that the blonde was snoring louder. Sasuke-kun, maybe you'll give me your bra, or do you still need it? Sakura began to approach the brunette, playfully shooting her eyes. But it turned out to be too small for me, look for it at Shikamaru's. Uchiha was quick to react, and looked with his squinting Sharingans at Sai, who had started this game of Do You Dare. Out of nowhere, a clone of Naruto appeared in front of Sasuke, handed him a note, and disappeared. Screams were heard from the side. Come on, give me your bra, dear. Well, it's so soft, foam rubber. Uchiha chuckled softly and hurried to the meeting place. At that time, Uzumaki was selflessly plucking flowers for a bouquet, and didn't know anything about any clone. Suddenly, a rather heavy stone with a note tied to it landed on his head. Leaving Tenten and Hinata to bring the guys to their senses, after another of Kibbins, who smells like a dog. Akamaru, get it, the blonde took advantage of the noise and ran off into the forest. Well done, Konohamaru. Now we'll definitely catch them hot. Sakura praised the teenager, I have to see for myself that Sasuke is on top. The girl's eyes sparkled in anticipation of yaoi. At the other end of the forest, Tenten lined up and led her group. It wasn't that she was into peeping, but her feminine curiosity got the better of her. The gang of caring friends headed towards the pre-prepared Paradise Hut, rubbing their hands with glee. Paradise Hut, same time. The sun has set, you can hardly see a thing. And why do you need this broom, Dobe? Go to the bathhouse, team. Let's move on. You also noticed that this meeting was set up? By whom? By the spirit of the third, damn it. What, really? They set it all up. Really? There was a pause. The sound of a kiss, then a slap. Go to hell. Is this an invitation? Naru, get into the tent. For what? It was not for nothing that they put it there. The crunch of branches, the sound of zippers being zipped up on the tent and unzipped on clothes. They have 20 minutes to do everything. The guys looked into the tent, but there was no one there. But the interior looked as if the old man of the forest had an orgy there. Some branches, leaves, flowers. Speaking of flowers, weren't these the same broom that the newly minted 6th Hokage was so diligently collecting, muttering something about not getting a bed strewn with rose petals from the Uchiha, and that he would have to make do on his own? What was going on here? Kiba's eyes widened. No one answered him, and only the Hughes looked at each other strangely. In any case, the peeping plan failed. Slightly swaying, and some of them even more so, the guys wandered off to their homes. Yes, it will be fun in Konoha in the morning. Warning, in the next chapter Naruto is supposed to appear in a dress to please the author's perverted fantasy XD. Part 8. Actually, the wedding. Well, the day has finally arrived that all the residents of Konoha have been waiting for so long, the wedding day. Sasuke woke up and the first thing he did was stretch his arms to the side to press himself against his morning heating pad, which Naruto used as. His fingers felt only cold sheets and something rectangular and hard. It turned out to be a book. When the Uchiha picked it up, he found a note sticking out between the pages. We sincerely congratulate you on your wedding day. We hope that you and Naruto will never forget this day, and we guarantee it. In order for the celebration to go off with a bang, you just need to follow some of the advice described in this book. And hurry up, the blondie is waiting. Your friends. With a bad feeling, the brunette opened the book and read on the title page, Wedding for Dummies. Sasuke whined quietly when he imagined what his caring friends would come up with this time, having slightly corrected the text. Your wedding morning will begin with the ransom of the bride from the groom. Then came the description of the wedding ceremony, the signs and customs, and with each new line the brunette became more and more afraid of the upcoming celebration. Uchiha got nervous. Why couldn't they have signed quietly? Knowing the guys, he went to collect his gear and prayed to all the gods that this ransom wouldn't turn into an A-rank mission. Having prepared himself, Sasuke decided to carry out a rescue operation. During the search, he became convinced that the entire Konoha had turned into a minefield, and sometimes in the most literal sense. After an hour of torment, Uchiha found Shikamaru, and saying that all this idiocy would last until the evening, sent the brunette to the hospital, explaining that he would find Naruto and bandages there. For some reason, when he passed by the nurses on duty at the post, they giggled embarrassedly and waved their hands at him. In one of the wards he found a cheerful group playing strip card games. Naruto and Ino were losing. Who said hair color doesn't matter? SS Sasuke? Is that you? The blonde didn't show that he was being held by force. You're just Captain Obvious. And what do you think I'm doing here? Are you looking for me? Thank you, Captain. Now let's run home. Uchiha looked menacingly at those present. By the way, the bandages came in handy. At home. SS Sakura, it seems to me that the delivery mixed up the boxes. I think we chose something more modest. The blonde turned to Haruno, but ran into a malicious smile. Say thank you to Hinata. The pink-haired girl waved her hand towards the girl who had huddled in the corner. And Naruto-kun, it's not like you think, Hyuga stammered embarrassedly, although she sent all her modesty to hell when she saw him in a dress last time. What a moral trauma XD. What can you do? She had to pretend, and Hinata fainted, angry that she would miss all the fun. The heiress of the Hyuga clan, damn it. Soon the house was filled with the blonde's heartrending screams, and Sasuke, who decided to inquire what was going on behind the door of the room, got a smack on the head from Sakura. With an indignant cry of "You were forbidden to look last time," the pink-haired Kunoichi slammed the door in front of the brunette's nose. Who was resting on the floor at the time? Maybe we should stuff him with cotton wool too? The only thing missing from him to be a girl is breasts, suggested Haruno. Actually, Sasuke hasn't complained about the size of my breasts yet, Naruto couldn't help but answer. When Uzumaki pulled off his shirt, the girls saw that it was truly true. The blonde's entire stomach, torso, and especially his chest were covered in hickeys of varying brightness. So that's why you don't go to the pool anymore, Ino and Sakura exchanged glances. 10-10, don't tighten it so tightly, I won't be able to breathe. Uzumaki wheezed, beginning to feel all the charms of the wedding dress on himself. Naruto, that's what a corset was made for, to tighten, Ino commented, at that moment trying to bring Hinata to her senses. Oh, Kami-sama, what was I thinking? How will I appear before people in this? The boy began to wail. Thinking is not your privilege, 10-10 winked at him, but we will have the world's first transvestite Hokage. These words shocked Naruto, and he remembered the rest of the procedure as if in a fog. When it came time to teach the 6th Hokage to walk in heels, a miracle happened. With a loud crunch, one of them broke when Haruno decided to try on her wedding shoes. Now, don't be upset, she tried to console Uzumaki, not noticing that he was shedding tears of happiness, not grief. Then the blonde happily put on his favorite sneakers, fortunately the hem was long. After some time at the registry office, yes, there is one in Konoha. The door swung open and in walked a beautiful girl with stripes on her cheeks. Naruto decided to play a joke on the groom and use his sexy jutsu. Oh, in vain. Now turn back. Who am I marrying here, you or this blonde? Sasuke flew up in an instant and grabbed Naruto by the chest. Well, that's me, Uzumaki blinked in surprise. Wait a minute, Uchiha was distracted a little, feeling what he was holding on to. You have some boobs. The brunette squeezed her impressive bust a couple of times. Here all those who hadn't yet managed to do so, opened their eyes wide when they saw the girl. Surprised Sasuke, you don't see that every day. When Uchiha stopped his hysteria and Naruto returned to his appearance, which caused a stormy ovation from the female part of those present, the newlyweds finally walked to the 5th, which, however, had already begun to conduct the wedding ceremony without the newlyweds. Why the veil? Sasuke couldn't help himself, soon getting tired of listening to the speech of the already drunk Tsunade. Idiot, it's a symbol of purity, and innocence. Uzumaki whispered quietly in response. You are immaculate, pure, and innocent? Uchiha could hardly hold back his laughter. And it's as if you had nothing to do with it. The blonde got angry. There was silence in the hall. Guys, maybe you should solve your personal problems in private? Jiraiya shouted from the hall. And you're here, perverted hermit. Uzumaki rejoiced and waved to the Sannin. Naruto, you put on a dress and marry an Uchiha, and you still call me a pervert. Jiraiya answered him just as happily. After this, the entire hall pretended to be captivated by what the fifth was broadcasting. Anyone who is against this marriage, let them speak out now and not be able to speak anymore, or keep silent and remain whole. Tsunade clearly got a taste for it. Stop the wedding! Gaara shouted as he ran into the hall. Everyone looked in surprise at the Sandman and Temari and Kankuro who had come up behind him. Why would that be? Sasuke was indignant, having already gotten the worst of it today. Katsukige took a video camera from behind his back and, pushing aside the first rows of spectators, aimed the lens at the newlyweds. Now go on, the red-haired man allowed, I like this spectacle. Oh, you're so kawaii, Naruto. Those present decided to ignore the touching Kazekage and patiently listen to Temari's explanations about how without Shikaku inside Gaara had become very kind and sweet. The one being discussed was currently blowing his nose into a handkerchief and muttering something about how lucky the Uchiha was to have a couple. When it was time to exchange rings, Uzumaki blushed deeply, feeling the cold metal touch his finger, because he remembered the story of his choice very well. Well, the newlyweds were ringed, and it was time to finish the wedding. You can kiss. Fifth said solemnly. How I've been waiting for this, Sasuke exhaled wearily, and pulling Naruto towards him by the waist, he pressed his lips to his in a kiss. Almost the entire female part of the hall fainted, and only a few of the most persistent continued to openly stare at the kissing couple. One of them was Hinata. She shook Sai, who was sitting next to her, and said, "Look and remember, it's time to finish the manga. When else will you get to see them pose?" When the boys broke away from each other, it was time for Naruchaku to throw the bouquet. Turning his back to the crowd and swinging it well, the blonde threw it into the crowd. Iruka was sitting on Kakashi's lap at the time, and seemed to have forgotten about everything in the world. Imagine his surprise when fragrant flowers tied with a ribbon flew into his hands. Yumino blushed deeply and wanted to run away, but Hitaki pressed him to himself, thus cutting off all paths to retreat. Or maybe it was meant to be? "Darling, marry me," Kakashi exclaimed. "I agree." "Ugh, I agree." The teacher was quick to respond. "Actually, I was remembering the book." The copy ninja was surprised, but I won't take my words back. Here the first surprise arrived. "Sasuke-kun. It's been so long since we've seen each other." A hissing sound came from the door. "Ow. Don't let that old pervert near me." Uchiha screamed instinctively and hid under the table. "Why is it old?" Warwick was offended. "I'm still quite good." "Hey, Oro, come to us. Let's remember our youth." Tsunade and Jiraiya shouted in unison, "The second door on the left along the corridor is to the banquet hall." But those weren't all the surprises. How can this be? I'm late. Everyone turned their heads towards the door. Oops. Itachi. Silly little brother, you lacked love. The elder Uchiha declared right from the doorway. WHAA? Sasuke's voice came from under the table. Love, baby. The elder Uchiha said with inspiration, look, now we've played the wedding, and then you won't have time for me, love affairs and all that. I won't let him come to you myself. Naruto perked up, but I'll help you get back to Konoha. He winked at Itachi, just don't let him follow you around the village. I must. Itachi didn't have time to finish speaking before Kisame materialized behind him and began to beat the brunette with his sword. Stop hitting me, you'll knock my sharings out. Itachi accompanied each blow with samahata in syllables. You said you were going to get fish food, but instead you ran off to your brother's wedding and left me at home, even though we both had invitations. The fish-headed one yelled. Naruto, is this your doing? Sasuke was horrified, and once again glanced at his older brother, who was arguing with his partner, and the back of Orochimaru, who was leaving, hugging Tsunade and Jiraiya. Apparently, the Sanins were reminiscing about their youth. Well, I thought you'd want to see your brother and teacher, the blonde said thoughtfully. Oh, yes, I really want to see them. In a coffin and white slippers, the brunette became strangely excited. Banquet hall, in a few minutes. Who was lucky enough to drink from the bride's shoe? To the power of youth. Lee shouted and poured the contents of his sneaker into himself. Lee, you should have put a shot in it. Guy rushed to his student, but the thick-browed guy was already starting to drift off to Wonderland, not so much from what he had drunk, but from the fact that the drink, had splashed around in a worn-out sneaker. Well, you can't drink from Shinobi sandals XD. I feel sick. Rock ran to the toilets, knocking down 3 girls, a group of kids from the academy, and an old lady with a cat. Where did she come from, along the way? On the way, Gaara intercepted him, covered him in sand, and dragged him aside, saying, "It was bad, it will be good. Let's play hospital, my grasshopper." Kankuro immediately rushed to save the girls struggling on the floor, and Temari spat on the inadequate behavior of her brothers and decided to hit on Shikamaru, who was peacefully dozing on the chairs. Meanwhile, Ino Shikacho, Kiba, Tenten, and Konohamaru surrounded Akatsuki. "Uncle, let me hold the sword," asked Konohamaru. "Oh, what a good boy. Hey, don't touch her, she'll eat you." "Oh well," the teenager took offense and muttered, "Blue fish. Itachi, why are all your friends bullying me?" "Don't be upset, my little fish, they just don't understand anything about sharks." By evening, there was not a single sober adult left in Konoha, and this is only according to official data. The generally accepted decision was to include this day in the village's holiday calendar, so that the shinobi would have another day off. In the darkness, couples, some in love and some not, began to wander around the corners. When Sasuke, exhausted from fatigue, carried Naruto into the house in his arms, he had no time for evil spirits. The main thing was to escape from the rowdy Niji, who, fortunately, had forgotten how to use the Byakugan from drinking. And finally the newlyweds were left alone. Sasuke laid Uzumaki, who was tired from the day, on the bed and leaned towards him, whispering in his ear. "Well, kitty, how should I love you today?" Part 9. The dress didn't want to come off, and so after a half-hour struggle with the corset, Sasuke gave in. A kunai flashed out of nowhere in his hand, but it immediately fell out when the Uchiha heard how much money had been spent on this wedding dress. Deciding that it could then be sold as the 6th wedding dress lot, he simply lifted the hem. Naruto immediately opened up invitingly and beckoned the brunette with his finger, licking his lips in a vulgar way. Sasuke tore his shirt, the buttons flying in different directions, each finding a fragile target, and with an Indian battle cry he pounced on the blonde. And then... yeah, you won't get it. Uchiha wanted sex too, but Uzumaki wanted to talk. "Sasuke, Sasuke? Will you always love me?" The blonde tried to look out from behind the hem to look into the brunette's eyes, but he wasted no time. "Yes," Sasuke answered, unzipping his fly with shaking hands. "And you'll never quit?" Naruto wasn't going to give up. "Yeah, damn right. Just shut up and don't cower." Well, the process has begun. There is no emergency brake on the plane, although no, even the plane has one, and Sasuke doesn't have one XD. What if you still fall out of love? This stubbornness was clearly not good for the heir of the Sharingan. "Well, look, now the honeymoon will pass, then we'll be good together for another 2 years, then work and everyday life will suck you in, and it will all end with me no longer satisfying you," the blonde reasoned, not paying much attention to the Uchiha's actions. "It's good that I didn't change my last name, otherwise it would have been offensive." "Oh, team. Can you be more gentle? I've been banging my head against the wall for about 5 minutes now." Then Sasuke stopped this godly activity and was already thinking about turning to 2 assistants, his right and left hands. "Anyway," Naruto said, "we lack variety. Remember how you pinned me down in the shower? Or that time, well, when you brought stuff that made me fight with Kyubi? So you actually liked it, and you denied it out of spite?" A lustful spark lit up his black eyes. "Well, it's not exactly out of spite," the blonde drawled thoughtfully, "but rather because you didn't discuss it with me, but decided everything on your own." "What? Even if you mention diversity to me, you call me a pervert and run away with your ears covered." The brunette got angry. "And you are a pervert. How are you? Quiet. Do you hear?" At this time under the window. "Damn, how much longer do we have to listen to their squabble? I'm already exhausted from waiting. Don't you think that if not they, then someone else might notice us?" Who do we have here? Hinata and Sai, what a surprise. A satisfied Uchiha face appeared from the window in front of the peeping and eavesdropping people, and what are you doing here? We study the psychology of young married couples, the artist answered calmly, demonstratively adjusting the tanto hanging behind his back. Sasuke, what are you doing there? Naruto asked, noticing the newly made husband's rump, covered with a sheet, sticking out of the window and leaving him so suddenly. Just breathing air, came the reply. You quickly, take a breath and come back, I'm not finished yet. Yeah. So how are we going to get out of this, huh? Uchiha stubbornly tried to turn the current situation to his advantage. Or maybe you'll just sign a contract with us? And where did Hinata get his business acumen from? What kind of contract is this? Sasuke asked, looking at the mysteriously smiling Kunoichi. Let's just say that you and Naruto have been put into production. Hyuga seemed really happy. And what kind of production is this, and what will happen to me personally? The brunette asked with interest. Manga, the girl answered, and handed Uchiha the rough sketches. For a while, Sasuke looked at the pictures without interest, but on the next page he stopped and swallowed loudly. How did those two manage to come up with something like that? Only then did the brunette decide to look at the cover. The title spoke for itself, Sasuneru. It's not that Uchiha didn't like the pictures, Sai is a very talented artist, and without complexes. However, if Uzumaki found out about this. Anyway, for the sake of his own health, Sasuke refused to provide material in the form of written reports and photographs, but he didn't speak out against it either. Hyuga began to be indignant, but Uchiha turned on his Sharingans, and the next moment Sai was running away from the newlyweds' house with Hinata under his arm. It seemed that she was shouting something to Uchiha about making him uke next time. But the brunette didn't know what that meant, and closed the window with a clear conscience. Then he thought about it and drew the curtains. Diving back into bed, Sasuke came across 3 conditions. First, help me take off this damn dress. Second, shut up and listen. Third, the first 2 are enough. It was a pity that even with the Sharingan, unfastening the little hooks took a long time, and what about the ribbons and Uzumaki's chatter? Anyway, when Naruto finally managed to pull off his wedding dress, he had already had his say, although he would have preferred to chatter some more, but seeing the way the brunette was looking at him, he pouted and turned to the wall. You didn't listen to me at all. So don't bother me. He tried to fight off the Uchiha. I've been waiting for so long, don't be stubborn, I'll sing you a song. The brunette tried to persuade him, I just remembered one by chance. Me too, Naruto quipped, I kissed and caressed her, stuck my fingers in her ass. Well, that reflects the whole essence of the situation. It seems that family life was threatening to start with a major quarrel. Why are you so sour? Sasuke felt that if nothing happened soon, he would spend his first wedding night not with his husband in bed, but with his right and left hands in the shower. Well, you made me laugh, he heard a disgruntled grumble in response. A couple of minutes passed in tension, but then, it seemed, some thought came to the dark-haired head. I have an idea. The brunette yelled and ran into the storage room. I don't really like this idea, the blonde said thoughtfully, watching the Uchiha running around in his negligee. Literally 10 minutes later, Sasuke returned with an impressive box in his hands. So what do you have there? Uzumaki asked without much interest, looking at the Uchiha jumping up and down with excitement. You'll see, his handsome face spread into a contented smile. Half an hour later. Well then put on a sailor suit. Dress it yourself, am I a woman to you? Well then, pajamas. No, I don't trust your talents as a doctor. And this? You already suggested vampire plus werewolf. Moreover, I have a feeling that you copied it from somewhere. Sasuke was furious. All the costumes he had painstakingly collected were mercilessly thrown into the trash. They had never been worn before. Uchiha still managed to get his, but he had to sweat a lot to immobilize Naruto. It's good that the handcuffs, belt and gag were at the bottom of the box and weren't thrown away. And in the morning, a good half of Konoha woke up from the scream of their Hokage. Cat in Sasuke's bed, I want a baby. No, not a kitten. Part 1. equals 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 equals. So, the guys spent their honeymoon quite wildly, but love is love, and they had to return to the village anyway. True, the album with their joint photos was immediately sent to the farthest drawer, since Sasuke really didn't want anyone to see him in a very stupid position. So 2 years have passed and some changes have occurred in the Uchiha Uzumaki couple. No, Sasuke fulfilled his marital duty without fail, and even took out the trash every day. Naruto enjoyed the job of Hokage, and it was no surprise that he soon began to understand what was actually required of him. Uchiha was accepted into ANBU, deciding that the past was the past, and a good ninja in a special squad would not hurt. In addition, no one would dare to challenge the Sixth's decision. Following the example of the guys, 2 more families were soon formed. Kakashi did not take his words back, and no one was surprised when he and Iruka also had a wedding, and to Naruto's joy as Hokage, he gave them a house on the outskirts of the village near a small pond. The female part was still able to have fun at Tenten's bachelorette party, who was already wearing a suspiciously loose dress at the wedding. Neji did not comment on such a sudden decision to get married, but did not deny that this was part of his plans. Tenten soon told her friends that she was pregnant. 7 months later, the Hyuga family welcomed a long-awaited addition, little Hisashi. And then one evening, when the well-known blonde and brunette were enjoying their day off on a bench in the park, the Hyugas passed by them, with Neji carrying his son in his arms, who was trying to thin out his daddy's hair while laughing merrily. The owner of the Byakugan was not at all angry, because the baby was a joy to him. The Uchiha looked sadly after the happy family and for once thought about the fact that he had to revive the clan. His black eyes were fixed on one point, and even the hair on the back of his head drooped, and the brunette stopped listening to the blonde's cheerful chatter. "Hey, Sasuke, what are you thinking about?" Uzumaki snapped his fingers in front of his nose and brought his husband out of his trance. "I want a child," Uchiha answered automatically, and only then realized that he had said it out loud. "What?" Naruto didn't understand. "That. I was supposed to revive the clan, but instead I got involved with you." For some reason, Sasuke felt so upset that this wish would remain unfulfilled. "Why are you yelling at me? Is it my fault that I'm a man?" The blonde bristled. No, actually, the brunette realized his mistake and hugged Uzumaki in a conciliatory manner. "Sorry," came a quiet reply, "I can't help you with that." "Oh well, I'll somehow survive," Uchiha sighed. There was silence for a few minutes, but soon the blonde's usual cheerful mood returned, and it seemed he remembered something interesting. "You seem to be free tomorrow? Will you help me sort through the scrolls?" he asked his husband. "What scrolls?" Sasuke was surprised. "Well, the other day I was doing an audit of the Hokage's residence, and I came across a box of scrolls in the basement," Naruto explained, "but for now they're all in my office. Do you think there's anything important to find there?" Uchiha looked at Uzumaki with interest. "Of course you can. I'm 100% sure of it, otherwise why hide them?" Nara gave his verdict, and, throwing Sasuke's hand off his shoulder, walked towards the house. Well, maybe it really will be possible to learn something new, and maybe even useful, these were the thoughts that were spinning in Uchiha's head as he slowly walked behind his blonde. In the morning, a pleasant surprise awaited Sasuke. Well, what can you think when you are completely sleepy, and something furry is poking you in the face? So the young man thought that they were going to strangle him with a towel while he was unable to resist. With a cry, "I will not be taken alive." Uchiha tried to jump out of bed but apparently got tangled in the blanket, and the swaddled one fell to the floor. The eyelid of his black eye twitched nervously when Sasuke saw Naruto's contented face above him, and something furry turned out to be a fluffy kitten, and the color was strangely similar to Uzumaki's hair. Surprise, the domestic Hokage yelled into his lover's ear, and began poking the kitten into his face again. "Stop it. Why do I need it?" Spitting out the wool that got on his lips, the brunette somehow got out of the blanket and looked at Naruto searchingly. "Just look at him, he's so cute. Pure kawaii, just like me. How immodest XD. I see. Did you choose the color for yourself?" The Sharingan began to rub his itchy nose. "Yeah. You'll take care of him, feed him, wash him, teach him to use the toilet, isn't he a child?" "Well, it all sounds pretty convincing. No, I don't need such happiness. I had a hard time with you last time, it was strange, and my eyes stung. Then let's leave it for me, please. Uzumaki asked tearfully. I said. Achoo. Yuchio burst into a loud sneeze and stared at the blonde with red eyes. Sasuke, let's do without the Sharingan, okay? Naruto was afraid that he had seriously angered his husband. Are you completely stupid? It's probably an allergy. Sasuke quickly ran away from the kawaii allergen, leaving the blonde to wonder who to give the kitten to. Having decided that there was no better owner than Iruka-sensei, Naru sent a shadow clone to him with this fluffy thing. It was a pity that he couldn't give Sasuke a present, and he, in fact, became more silent than usual. But time passed and there was no time for regrets, it was time to get ready for work. As soon as the door to the Hokage's office slammed shut, Naruto immediately rushed to the chest standing near the table. It looked quite large, so if it was filled to the brim, then there would be more than an hour's worth of work here. And why did Uzumaki want to deal with this himself? After all, it was possible to hand everything over to the appropriate department, and not mess around with it together. While sorting through the scrolls, the boy's thoughts were surprisingly different. If Naruto thought that he would find a description of some new technique here and become even cooler, then Sasuke thought about how to persuade the blonde to put a lock on the door so that he could try to lay out his husband right on the work table. However, these dreams were destined to remain dreams. There was everything here, from descriptions of familiar techniques to codes, there was even a cookbook that had somehow gotten here. On one of the scrolls, a little man was drawn over the hieroglyphs, who, if you use your imagination, resembled the first Hokage. Next to it, in clumsy handwriting, was written Grandpa. Apparently, this was the work of Granny Tsunade. However, Naruto did not find anything particularly interesting, and the evening was drawing to a close, and the blonde fell asleep without noticing it. Sasuke looked up from one of the scrolls to call out to Uzumaki, but when he saw that he was already sleeping peacefully, decided not to wake him. Taking the Hokage hat that had slipped to the side off the dozing blonde, Uchiha began to collect the scrolls that he had not yet examined from the floor, when his gaze caught one very suspicious one among them. Unfolding it, the brunette ran his gaze over the writing, and his face lit up with a slightly stupid smile. Hiding the scroll in his breast pocket and kissing the sleeping Naruto on the temple, Sasuke, filled with enthusiasm, went to Tsunade to ask her about the truthfulness of what was written. Stepping outside, he glanced at the dark windows of the Hokage's office. If what was written in the scroll was possible, then his life with Naruto could soon change dramatically. P.S. I'm waiting for feedback, because it helps to get inspired. Part 2. P.S. Everyone has their own explanation for male pregnancy, so let's have a laugh and not think about why everything is the way it is explained. Sasuke, you see, this technique has only been used a few times and is intended for women. Tsunade tried for the umpteenth time to explain to the Uchiha that he was craving the impossible. You just haven't tried. It says here that everything will work out even if the woman is infertile as long as there is a sufficient supply of chakra. The brunette insisted. Even if that's the case, do you even understand that you're taking a huge risk, and you're not risking yourself? I understand. If I hadn't been sure of that, I wouldn't have asked you for help, Sasuke fawned. Okay, but did you ask him about it? I see. So how do I do this if you haven't talked to him and he doesn't know why I'm calling him to the hospital? I'll figure out how, the brunette smiled mysteriously, and the woman felt that the blonde would suffer. Naruto was rushing home to get to dinner as soon as possible, because today it was Sasuke's turn to cook. In anticipation of a tasty treat, the blonde opened the door to their house. That was all Uzumaki managed to shout before tripping over something and falling unconscious on the floor. The stretched thin wire worked flawlessly, praise be to Naruto for his clumsiness and inattention, and now the Uchiha only had one small thing left to do, deliver him to the hospital to Tsunade. After waiting for about half an hour until night fell on the village, Sasuke picked up his precious cargo and, hiding in the shadows of the houses, stealthily walked towards the hospital. A turn, another one, a short run, and here it is, the hospital. There were literally 10 meters left to go, when Sasuke heard a quiet cough nearby. Can I help? Uchiha jumped up in surprise and let go of Uzumaki. The next moment Sai stepped out of the darkness in front of him and very successfully caught the fallen blonde. "So you don't need help?" the guy asked for the second time. "Why?" Uchiha stared at the artist in complete confusion. "I assume Naruto got sick and you're taking him to the hospital?" Sai tried to clarify. Yes, of course. That's right." The brunette nodded his head in agreement, tearing the unconscious body out of the stranger's hands. "Don't worry, I can handle it myself." With these words, Sasuke rushed through the open doors of the hospital with the speed of a world champion sprinter. Sai was even surprised by such behavior of the usually calm Uchiha and decided that this incident should definitely be reported to Hinata. She will generate a new plot, and he'd just draw. By the way, their underground manga became popular and even gained regular viewers. And what else could the young Kunoichi do, whose black-eyed dream is now legally married to the 6th Hokage? That's right, read, fap, drool and envy XD. Hayashi was initially happy that his daughter had started to behave more freely, and even began to spend time with Sai, although she had previously avoided guys a mile away. Unfortunately, she did not have any special feelings for the young man he had predicted as Hinata's fiancé, and even if she was going to meet him in a short dress with a blatantly low neckline, they did not talk about anything except work. So, the artist went home, thinking that he would soon need to buy new drawing supplies, and Sasuke, having made sure that there were no more suspicious individuals nearby, sighed with relief and turned away from the window from which he had been watching Sai leave. Here Uchiha had already entered one of the rooms where Tsunade was waiting for him and laid Naruto on the couch. "You're not weak," the woman, who had already had enough of waiting, chuckled. "Of course. He'll be out for at least another half hour," the brunette cheered her up. "Now get out." Tsunade suddenly became nervous, so she rather rudely asked Sasuke to leave. What? The young man didn't quite understand. "This is not a sight for the faint of heart," the woman said briefly. And with a swing she kicked Uchiha into the corridor. For half an hour the brunette sat nervously by the door and waited for everything to be done. He was torn with curiosity, but he did not dare to disobey the fifth, because no one wants to be smeared on the wall. Soon the door opened, and the young man was able to look into the ward. Uzumaki immediately began to fidget on the couch, and, wincing, came to. "What am I doing here?" The expected question from the blonde. Well, Sasuke thought about how to lie more convincingly. "Darling, you tripped on the threshold, fell and lost consciousness. I thought you would never wake up." With these words, the brunette threw himself on Naruto's neck and burst into tears. Fortunately he cried rarely, and he had collected enough tears. Uzumaki was so touched by this that he believed his husband unconditionally and cried with him. Tsunade, looking at this couple, twirled her finger at her temple and quickly threw them out into the street. There was no reason, as they say, for healthy people to occupy beds. She decided to talk to Uchiha during the day. "I wonder how all this will turn out. If only the 6th Hokage doesn't croak." The next day, it took the 5th at least an hour to describe in detail the possible manifestations and consequences of the jutsu used on Naruto. "And one more thing," Tsunade added at the end, "I can't say whether it will work out or not, but if it does, then there's a high probability of twins being born." "So this is a family of 4 at once?" Uchiha tried to understand whether this would be good or not. "But they will be your copies. The main thing is that the father's genetic material gets into the mother's body, and in general it is not so important how. Although in this case we have a paradox, Naruto is also a man. But I think you will choose the most pleasant way for both of you." The woman finished the brunette's training course. "And give him this to drink." Tsunade handed him a small tin box. "What is this?" The brunette raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Let's put it this way, use this and he won't be able to refuse." The woman winked at the young man. Sasuke took the hint, and the corners of his thin lips lifted slightly in anticipation of the coming night. He would have to give it his all. Sasuke digested the information for a couple more minutes, but his decision was unshakable. Having thanked the woman for her help, Uchiha rushed home on the wings of love to have everything ready by the time the blonde came home from work. Since the result could be something Naruto could not expect, he had to do everything so that he would not regret this night. And now the 6th Hokage returns home. On the way home, Naruto came to the conclusion that some streets needed streetlights, and the road to the Uchiha quarter needed pothole repairs, and then it would be safe to run the evening bus named after his greatness. And anyway, why the hell does he live on the outskirts if he can afford a house closer to the center of the village? Although this has its advantages. By the time you drag yourself to work in the morning, the desire to sleep completely disappears. Here we go again. Who thought of throwing watermelon rinds on the road? The most important person in Konoha shouted into the void, finding himself on the ground for the umpteenth time. I'll organize a garbage special service, and you'll dance to my tune. After that he yelled a couple more times for the sake of decency, but after making sure that everyone except him was already asleep, he fell silent and continued on his way, but this time in silence. And here it really is, a house. As soon as the blonde crossed the threshold, a suspiciously happy Uchiha flew up to him, wrapped his arms around his neck, and kissed him on the cheek. Aren't you very tired? The brunette asked. I want to give you an unforgettable evening. The blonde, who had expected anything but this from Sasuke, fell into a stupor and seemed to go a little cross-eyed from happiness, although not for long. It seemed that his brain understood why it was placed in his skull and began working harder. Wait, why was it a kiss on the cheek and not a French kiss like usual? Shouldn't they have knocked him to the floor, cutting off all escape routes? And why is there such concern about tired or not tired? Suspicious. Why did you suddenly decide to show high feelings? The blonde frowned incredulously. What do you want from me this time? Uchiha spread his hands, as if to say I am absolutely pure, and Uzumaki had no choice but to believe her husband. Maybe he really decided to please him without any selfish intent. Go splash around in the bath for now, and I'll finish getting ready here. The brunette pushed Naruto towards the bathroom, and, rubbing his hands contentedly, he returned to the bedroom. After all, Uzumaki was just a tired young man now, and he didn't need to act smart like he did in front of the important lords, and he could use some rest. So he went to the bathroom, after glancing at Sasuke, who looked overly pleased even from behind. Naruto sank into the warm water and felt relief for the first time that day. He knew he should have sorted out the reports 3 days ago, but when had he ever listened to reason? His head was still buzzing from yesterday's fall, and his insides felt like they were twisted into a tight ball. Besides, Sasuke was clearly up to something. The peaceful splashing of the water made him sleepy, and the blonde would have fallen asleep, breathing in the lingering aromas in the bathroom, if he hadn't been hurried by a knock on the door. Then Uzumaki rubbed his eyes and climbed out of the already cooled water. Drying himself with a soft towel, he found the shorts left for him. True, as it turned out, they were too thin and tight, although it was even pleasant that they fit so tightly to the body and tickled the skin with friction. The blonde was terribly curious about what his husband had planned, and without wasting any time, he looked into the bedroom. The sight was, to put it mildly, unusual. No, of course, the aromatic candles standing everywhere, the light of which was reflected from the convex sides of the tall glasses, really did evoke a certain atmosphere of romance, but the rose petals. Over the 2 years of family life, Naruto had become accustomed to the Uchiha's possessive and impudent behavior, and what was happening in this room was beyond his understanding. Although, frankly speaking, he lacked such moments with a share of romance, but he could not demand such things from Sasuke. But here you go. Almost holding his breath, Uzumaki sat down at a low table and immediately heard the splash of wine being poured into glasses, and the Uchiha sitting opposite was already looking at him with wet, gleaming eyes. The whole atmosphere was so intimate that Naruto felt like a trapped guy again, like that time when he first gave himself to Sasuke, and for some reason, embarrassed, he lowered his eyes. Of course, now it was a little funny to remember how spontaneously everything happened, but in the end, everything worked out for the best. Uchiha noticed that Uzumaki was staring at the floor and had lost track of what was happening for a while, and took advantage of this to pour some of the powder that Tsunade had given him into his glass. It looked like it was some kind of aphrodisiac, and a very concentrated one at that. The brunette had thought of boiling it before giving it to Naruto. What if something happened to the kitty? Just a little bit of that powder, and now he was barely holding back from nagging the blonde right then and there. Meanwhile, the aforementioned blonde came out of his stupor and, giving his husband a timid smile, reached for his glass, hoping that it would give him courage. The brunette was also a little nervous, but only because Uzumaki was acting too constrained, and in this situation it was necessary to achieve the opposite effect. But just a couple of minutes, and Sasuke was rewarded for his efforts. Now Naruto was already flushed and wiping sweat from his forehead, licking his dry lips. Uchiha, like a predator silently sneaking up on its prey, was near the blonde in a moment and was already scorching his face with his breath. A second clash of gazes, in which the same desire is read, and Uzumaki himself becomes the initiator of the kiss, which does not happen so often. His body must have gone crazy, because it demands only one thing, to be taken right here and now, so when the unbearably long distance to the bed is finally overcome, Naruto pulls off the brunette's t-shirt while still standing, but receives an unexpected refusal to continue. Not so fast. With these words Sasuke pushed the blonde onto the bed. Today I will please you until you go crazy, and deftly turns the young man over onto his stomach, pressing him down with his weight. Of course, what he had planned was now becoming torture for both of them, but the Uchihas do not throw words to the wind. On the nightstand next to the bed, he finds a pre-prepared bottle and opens the lid. The smell of vanilla spreads throughout the room. At first, Sasuke wanted to stop at orange, but its smell would most likely relax Naruto, and vanilla should awaken instincts and sensuality. The funniest thing was that the young man had no idea that he would ever find a use for this knowledge, but as a genius, he is obliged to know everything, and now he is happy that there is no such thing as unnecessary information. The brunette poured some aromatic oil onto his palm and immediately touched the heated skin. "It's cold." Naruto squeaked under him, and the Uchiha began to rub the thick drops, which instantly warmed up from the warm body. Confident, but not too intrusive movements of the hands are only occasionally interrupted by teasing kisses, which provoke the guys more and more. Hands slide down along the spine, and a kiss on the neck between the fifth and sixth vertebrae causes an indefinite moan from the blonde, as if asking for a continuation. Then the fingers return up massaging the shoulders, and thin lips, in contrast, slide down. The tongue runs between the shoulder blades, and Uzumaki responds with a quiet purr to the stimulation of the cat's place. Smiling and deciding to completely drive his spouse crazy, the brunette leans forward and presses his chest to the blonde's back, and he begins to thrash under him, from the maddening weight of his white-hot body. And now, having practically angered the spouse, who is suffocating with desire, Sasuke again returns to business, this time moving to the lower back. The task is still the same, to delay the moment. Hands tease, only going under the elastic and not touching the tensely clenching buttocks, which causes Uzumaki to muffled moans. Well, it's time to change the location. The Uchiha turns the blonde onto his back, frees him from his shorts, although not without effort, and lowers his knees on either side of Naruto's hips. For a few moments, you can admire what seems to be a long familiar sight. His light hair is a little tangled, and small strands are stuck to his temples and forehead, and in his wide-open eyes you can read a silent plea that his lips, parted from heavy breathing, do not dare to utter. Several candles have already gone out, but the remaining ones are enough to enjoy the play of light on his tanned body, the most interesting corners of which are hidden by shadows. The brunette has long known all the most sensitive points of Naruto's tanned body, but with some passion he also searches for new ones, which he does very well. What could be easier? The young man licks and bites the lobe of his right ear, but only the right one, the left one should not be touched under any circumstances, and runs his hands through his light hair, sorting through the hair on the back of his head. Uzumaki narrows his eyes in satisfaction and sighs loudly in response. After playing with the soft silk of his hair for a few seconds, Sasuke covers Naruto's lips with his own and instantly takes possession of the blonde's breath. Breaking the kiss, the brunette lightly bites Uzumaki's lower lip, accidentally grabbing the dimple under it, and receives in response a moan that is unexpected not only for him, but also for Naruto himself. Here, another point of pleasure has been found. But this is only the beginning. Another bite just below the Adam's apple, and the blonde literally trembles with ever-increasing desire. Although Sasuke continues to delay the desired moment. This is followed by a kiss on the neck, which is accompanied by a skillfully placed hickey and for some reason always makes Naruto blush and whisper something unintelligible. Uzumaki can no longer distinguish between his hands and lips, and only hopes that this torture will soon end. Uchiha caresses his nipples with his tongue, and now the blonde's chest is already noisily rising, and his breathing quickens. Before going lower, he blows on the hard beads glistening with his saliva, and gets another portion of pleasure, admiring how the blonde's expression changes, and even his eyes open, clouded by the passion splashing in them. I wonder how much longer they can endure. Now you can go even lower, and kiss his flat stomach, with muscles tense under the skin. And how Naruto wriggles when an even contour is outlined near the navel, and the tongue pushes into the hollow, imitating friction. Apparently, Uzumaki's patience is coming to an end, and the brunette notices an attempt at sabotage. This time Uchiha manages to intercept the blonde's hand, which is crawling downwards, and despite the protesting grumbling, he takes the trembling fingers into his mouth. It seems that Naruto remembers the incident 2 years ago with the choice of the ring every time and he feels ashamed, but now he can moan without holding back, which he does with joy. But it was time to move on to the main thing. The only pieces of clothing that both guys had on fell to the floor, and Uchiha's hands went down to the part of the blonde's body that needed attention. Thin white fingers easily squeezed the excited flesh, and his thumb lightly ran over the head oozing with lubricant, but only to be replaced by the same, downright magical tongue. Over the 4 years that they had lived together, Sasuke had to master the technique of oral sex to perfection. After all, only in this case did Naruto agree to everything. Now the brunette did not have the unpleasant sensations that he had experienced before, and the satisfying moans pushed him to action. Without letting Uzumaki finish, the young man released his penis from his mouth, and a thread of saliva stretched from his tongue to the head. However, it was time to move on, and now the lubricant would come into play. He had to take care of his husband, otherwise he would get offended and not let him near him for a week. Warming up the cool gel with his fingers, Sasuke inserts his fingers into the pliantly relaxing ring of muscles. Not that it was necessary, but the Uchiha liked listening to the drawn-out moans of the kitty, who was terribly excited by this action. The brunette torments Naruto in this way for a couple of minutes until he himself begins to impale himself on the fingers. Having decided that they have both suffered enough, Sasuke places his cock, thirsty for release, against the young man's anus and easily enters the developed anus. It is evident that they have suffered too long and therefore literally a couple of minutes are enough for them. The fullness inside gives the blonde incomparable pleasure, and the friction against the contracting walls brings the brunette to the peak of pleasure. Both experience an orgasm almost simultaneously, except that Sasuke needed to make a couple of thrusts to spill inside Naruto, while he was already suffocating with pleasure. Now they can lick the blonde's belly and blow out the candles that have not yet gone out. "You, monster," Uzumaki croaked, "you've completely worn me out." "But you liked it," Sasuke lightly ran his hand along the exhausted blonde's thigh. "Yeah, it's not often that you manage to wear me out like this." Uchiha didn't understand whether it was praise or a hint that he had stopped trying in bed. In any case, there was hope that the blonde wouldn't kill him if he got into an interesting situation. Hugging and holding the kitty close, Sasuke fell asleep peacefully with a sense of accomplishment. But Naruto couldn't understand why he had a strange feeling in his stomach since the previous day, but, attributing it to his lifestyle and not very healthy diet, he also fell asleep. Part 3. Naruto greeted the new morning not in a very good mood, because he had to clean up the traces of yesterday's surprise. If the dried petals disappeared quite quickly, driven by a broom, then the wax that dripped onto the floor did not want to give up without a fight. It was necessary to forget that from the very morning Uchiha was leaving for a long mission. Probably happy that he dodged cleaning. Having finished this difficult task, Uzumaki got ready and, trying to walk as slowly as possible, trudged to the Hokage's residence in order to sit there without leaving for at least a few days. On the way, Naruto once again thought that in this regard Kiba was very lucky, who had Akamaru. Maybe it was worth asking him to get a puppy, so that he could ride on it later? Although, he already rides on Uchiha, although not in that sense. In any case, the sun that came out dispelled the blonde's sorrows and convinced him that life wasn't so bad, and that he could get by with just Sasuke. "And what are our plans for today?" he happily asked Ino, who was temporarily replacing his ill assistant, as he entered the office. Yamanaka placed a huge stack of documents on the table in front of him and shouted through the open door, "Bring them in." The next moment, in addition to the first, 3 more piles of papers were lying on the table, which Konohamaru and his friends had dragged in. Having muttered something like, "Hokage's order, Hokage's order, more crap, not work. The guys ran away, and Naruto stared in shock at the mountain of documents that had appeared out of nowhere. But didn't I sort everything out yesterday? Sixth looked at the girl with a pleading look, but received a negative nod and a hit on the head with a folder. It would be better if the war started, it would be better if the meteorite fell, Uzumaki began to wail, it would be better if Ichiraku burned. Having shouted the last thing, Naruto thought for a second. No, let's leave Ichiraku alone. Looking at his watch and figuring that if he didn't get distracted from work and slept no more than 4 hours a day, then the paperwork would take 3 or 4 days, the young man sighed sadly and began sorting through the papers, starting with the mission reports. By the end of the 3rd day, Uzumaki had almost gone crazy and was about to set the remaining papers on fire, but at that very moment, Ino entered the office, took the matches, and gave him a beating no worse than Sakura. As it turned out later, he was about to burn the annual report on the village's income and expenses, for which he would certainly have been removed from his post. A few minutes later, the recently remembered Haruno appeared in the residence, and, shining a flashlight into his eyes, muttered something about sudden and progressive schizophrenia, advised him to rest for a day, relax, and not pick up matches until the paperwork was finished. In the end, after relaxing, Naruto was carried out of the bar by Hinata and Sai, who arrived in time, or were they just watching him? In general, these two dragged the bubble-blowing Uzumaki home, and at the same time searched the rooms for, as Hyuga put it, suspicious items. It is unknown what she found with her Byakugan, but after checking the storage room, she was convinced that the Uchiha is not as simple as he seems, and soon Naruto will understand this once again. Sasuke, who came in the morning, tried for a long time to wake up his sweetly sleeping husband, and, in the end, poured a bucket of water on him right in the bed. Then wild curses and screams rained down, accompanied by writhing and falling on the wet floor, but in the end everything was resolved peacefully, the decision to go to the shower, and then to the kitchen. After a rather violent fight over who would get into the shower first, the bathroom resembled a minefield with the markings of a football pitch drawn with toothpaste. At least nothing had burned in the kitchen, otherwise they would have been left chewing burnt toast by candlelight, like the last time when there was a short circuit and the boys were left without electricity for a week. When the morning finally ended, both of them got ready to go to the Hokage's residence, Naruto, to perform his duties, and Sasuke, to submit a report. While Uzumaki was busy with papers, Uchiha managed to fall asleep while writing a report and slept happily for an hour until the blonde had to go to the bathroom. Naruto looked out from behind the pile of papers and saw that the report was still unfinished, and what's more, it was imprinted on Sasuke's face. After a short argument for the sake of decency, Uzumaki gave his snoring husband a loving kick off the couch, for which he learned all of Uchiha's secret thoughts about himself. "And you too, good man." He interrupted Sasuke's angry tirades, and put a new sheet of paper in front of him, advising him to write on it from now on, and not on his face. When the brunette finished his report and tried to quickly escape, his escape route was blocked by shadow clones, and Uchiha stayed to help of his own free will, i.e. under duress. Everything would have been fine, except that Sasuke hadn't managed to take advantage of it, because whenever he tried to get closer to Naruto, his attempt was stopped either by the busy Hokage himself, or by the messenger scurrying back and forth, who on this day came running every half hour, as if on schedule. Fortunately, this day turned out to be the hardest of the coming week, at least for Naruto, who decided to deal with paperwork as the documents came in, and not when the deadlines were tight. He even managed to succeed in this, and now he often had free time in the middle of the workday, which he could use wisely or just sleep until a knock on the door woke him up. Sasuke was less lucky. He was sent with a group of other experienced shinobi to the Land of Wind to accompany one of the daimyo, so the journey was long and difficult. Along the way, they often got into sandstorms, and the Uchiha returned only after 3 weeks. After this, he recovered for several days, but tirelessly watched his husband, trying to find some changes in him, which were not observed. Some more time passed, and Sasuke's condition could be described as follows. A week passes, another one passes. And now it's time to stop the experiment. And Sasuke is watching Naruto. Can't understand anything. There were no changes in Uzumaki's behavior or anything else, and so Uchiha had already despaired and wilted, although he continued to watch the blonde closely. Naruto seemed not to notice that his husband was almost burning holes in him with his gaze, and continued to lead his carefree existence. Occasionally he would whine that his stomach hurt, and in response he would receive a moral lecture about how eating only this crap, how impolite Sasuke was about ramen, was dangerous to your health. But Naruto did not listen and continued to eat mainly this crap until one day he threw up it. What to do? Uchiha had to drag her green-faced husband to the hospital. Sakura sat by the window in the hospital and looked at the rising sun, comforted by the thought that in a couple of hours her shift would be over and she would finally be able to go home and get a good night's sleep. Nothing out of the ordinary or even interesting had happened that night. It was hardly interesting that a whole mountain of ducks had fallen out of a locker onto Haruno, giving her a nice bump on the head. So, the girl was thinking about how she had been a maid for too long. Well, all the cute guys have run away from me and yaoi. No, I've long suspected it about Naruto, but Sasuke. And Kakashi-sensei too. And he was such a mature man, and I've known him for a long time. With him I could have a strong family. Although it did, but not for me. By the way, I need to give Iruka-sensei that cough medicine he asked for yesterday, otherwise he'll be annoying for the next week. And why shouldn't he self-medicate? Breathe in some potatoes, or melt some sugar. So what about the family? Oh, yeah. Maybe I should give Lee a chance? What if I pluck his eyebrows and he'll be fine? What's the difference now? I'll keep poking around and they'll tear him off with my hands. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of the Uchiha Uzumaki couple. From the second floor, she could clearly see Sasuke supporting Naruto, who was either clutching his stomach or covering his mouth. It seemed that the kunoichi would not be bored for the rest of her time. The examination yielded nothing, as did the questioning, but most likely it was just food poisoning. So Sakura sent them back, ordering the hapless Hokage to drink activated charcoal and eat normally, because the Uchiha had not managed to convince Naruto to finally switch to human food, which is more than an open package of noodles and boiling water. Upon returning home, the blonde felt better, but soon felt worse again. As a result, he had to return to the hospital again and undergo a full examination. Sakura was clutching the piece of paper in her hand in shock and couldn't believe what was written. No, if in addition to everything else this was an X-ray reading, then everything could be attributed to the unfortunate device, but it broke down and was temporarily replaced by Hinata, and there was no doubt about her Byakugan. It was not for nothing that she was one of the first to learn about Kurenai's pregnancy, who was now raising a 4-year-old son with Asuma. Swallowing, the girl nevertheless opened the door to the reception room, where at that time Sasuke and Naruto were waiting for the result. Haruno stood for a while, looking at how Uzumaki was suffering over the pelvis, and decided that there was no point in delaying. Here's the thing, Sakura began, but her words were drowned out by the splash of Naruto's lunch. Without looking up, the blonde waved his hand, asking him to continue. How can I put this? The kunoichi hesitated. Are you sure that you are a man? What do you mean by that? Uzumaki tore himself away from the basin and raised his slightly squinting eyes to the girl. The thing is, Haruno thought about how to tell the boys the crazy news. Give birth already. The blonde couldn't stand it. How was he to know that the pink-haired girl was thinking that this would not happen to her anytime soon, but the 6th Hokage would soon surprise everyone? Naruto, you're pregnant. The basin with rather unpleasant contents slipped out of Uzumaki's hands and everything that had been in the stomach some time ago ended up on Sakura's sandals. While the girl was doubled over with hysterical laughter, and Naruto was staring at one point, Sasuke chuckled contentedly and narrowed his eyes. Admit it, is this your doing? Holding back the urge to vomit, Uzumaki grabbed his husband by the chest and lifted him off the floor. Well, yes, Uchiha answered without a twinge of conscience. Why didn't you tell me earlier, darling? Part 4. Sasuke was the last to expect such a reaction and was therefore quietly stunned. Naruto impulsively hugged him, but almost slipped on the wet floor and would have definitely fallen if not for the Uchiha's lightning-fast reaction, thanks to which they both remained on their feet. Kami-sama, and I trusted this person to bear my future child. Sasuke was horrified and closed his eyes so as not to watch Uzumaki jumping around Sakura asking her to tell him everything he needed to know as future parents right now. She shrank from him and ran out the door, promising to bring Tsunade. While the boys were waiting, Naruto was really worn out and was spinning around like a flea on a comb until Uchiha grabbed him in his arms and sat him on his lap. Although the blonde managed to jump up and down there too. When Haruno returned as promised, with Fifth, Sasuke and Tsunade began to tell Uzumaki that everything was possible thanks to one technique from a scroll found in a box, which is still not completely disassembled. From their explanations, Naruto, due to his intelligence, understood only that this was somehow connected with chakra and now he cannot use techniques, so that something bad does not happen. Yes, I understood everything. He tried to interrupt the flow of words that meant nothing to him. The blonde said, "Why do I have such strange feelings?" Of course, you will have unpleasant sensations. As already said, now you have a new internal organ. And? Why? How are you going to carry the baby? In your stomach? In general, the explanation started all over again. When Naruto found out that he had been pregnant for a whole month, he was incredibly happy, though later he got angry at Sasuke for keeping this joyful fact hidden from him. Who would have known that the next 8 months would leave unforgettable memories? 2 months. Sasuke, what should I do? I'm completely worn out, Hokage this, Hokage that, but I can't be nervous. Go on maternity leave. Why didn't I think of this myself? You don't need to think, that's what I'm for. If you are so smart, then tell me who we will have? A boy or a girl? Go and ask the doctors. No, I won't go there again, and don't try to persuade me. But why? What did they do to you? I won't talk to you about this. And in general, I'll just take it and get offended at you. That's right. I'm offended at you. Why have you become so naughty? You can't be nervous, and stop eating ramen, it's harmful. And I don't eat it anyway, because it makes me now. Come on, stop it. Come on, don't cry. Kitty, calm down. Should I sing you a lullaby? Bye. Sleep, my joy, fall asleep. Oh, he fell asleep. I'll have to make a note of that. 3 months. I can't sleep on my stomach now. But you always sleep on your back or on your side. But if I wanted to, I could roll over onto my stomach. Well, now I'm going to cry. Stop it, it doesn't work on me anymore. So, you finally admit that you are a heartless brute? If I confess, will you stop nagging me? Maybe. Okay, I admit it. I knew it. Now quickly bring me some hot chocolate and pickles. Watching his husband dip a cucumber he had fished out of a jar into hot chocolate and then crunch it with pleasure, Sasuke couldn't help but twitch nervously. Naruto, on the other hand, was enjoying the taste he had just discovered and couldn't understand why the Uchiha didn't want to try it, it was so delicious. 4 months. Sasuke woke up from a wild scream, and for a second it seemed to him that labor had begun. But then the brunette remembered that children are not born in the 4th month, and he felt better. Although the scream was followed by sobbing. Oh well, he'll cry, he'll run to the toilet less often, decided the Uchiha, and prepared to fall asleep. Sasuke. A sob right in the ear, you're not sleeping, don't pretend. The brunette had to open his eyes and wipe the upset Naruto's snot. Now, calm down. What happened, my beloved incubator? He tried to calm Uzumaki, who was sobbing on his chest, for which he received a strong blow to the stomach. I dreamed that you didn't love me. Sasuke was stared at by tear-filled blue eyes, shining in the light of the nightlight. That's not true, is it? Yes, I love you. How tired Uchiha was of this question. Why are you talking to me like that again? By the way, I'm the mother of your future children. Or the father. What difference does it make? The blonde started to get hysterical. Calm down, you can't be nervous, Sasuke tried to calm his enraged husband. And who is constantly driving me crazy? I'll just go and leave you. Naru. Let's see how you can cope without me. Naru. What are you scared of? Naruto, if you're going to leave, then go to your old apartment, and I won't let you there. And really, stop being hysterical, or the little one will take after you. How many times do I have to tell you that we're having twins and both boys? I know better than these half-doctors. And that's why you refuse to go to the hospital? Yes. I refuse. And you will deliver the baby at home in the bathtub. Why is this happening to me? 5 month. Dobe, stop it. Oh, come on, it's no big deal. I said, spit it out immediately. Ugh. Well, are you happy now? Of course I am. Tell me, why are you eating bath foam? You can't even be allowed to wash yourself alone. Well, she had such an appetizing smell. What? It would be fine if it smelled like strawberries, but it smells like spruce. Are you tired of normal food? You've already had enough dinner for both of us today. Actually, I'm not feeding myself, but your future children. Oh, what is this? What? Don't scare me. It looks like someone is kicking. What? Touch it yourself. Holy shit. 6 month. Wake up. Wake up, moron. Naruto, spaghetti with ice cream is in the freezer, toothpaste is in the bathroom near the mirror, and the blanket Irika gave me is in the closet on the 3rd shelf, Sasuke answered automatically and pressed himself closer to the soft pillow. Uchiha, get off my stomach. You'll make all my children sleep. So this is a stomach? That's strange, but it seemed to me like a pillow. Well, now you're saying that I'm FAAA. Stop crying, you're not fat, yet. And you too. Have you all conspired? I won't go out on the street anymore. 7 month. Sasuke? Oh, Sasuke? Uchiha felt Naruto hug him from behind and crawling his playful hands into his pants. What do you want? He asks in a tired tone and, throwing the blonde's hands off his waist, turns to face him with the intention of pretending to listen, but in reality to sleep. Listen, we haven't had sex for 7 months now, and you still have an erection every morning. I don't really want to, but I'm worried about you. Maybe I should at least give you a blowjob? I don't want to anymore. What do you mean? You've been ignoring me for the last 2 weeks. And why is this I don't want to anymore? Have you gotten yourself a mistress? Yeah. Should I introduce you? Yes, her. Why are you shoving your hand into my hand? Meet the right hand. I have one more, the left. Sometimes we have sex in 3. Uchiha, you're an idiot. I hate you. 8 month. Sasuke, why don't you give me flowers? Has love passed and the tomatoes withered? Maybe because you're a guy? Or because you yourself refuse them? So what, should I beg you for them now? You could have guessed. Go away to your job, and don't even think about coming back without flowers. In the evening the scandal repeated itself. Uchiha came home with a bouquet of white roses, but for some reason this did not please the blonde. White is the color of separation, and I want red. You'll go to the bathhouse with this broom. With these words Naruto threw the bouquet at her husband and turned away. Uchiha had to fulfill his lover's wish. Sitting next to Sakura, who was gluing the scratches on his cheeks, the young man cursed his fate and tried to steal a bottle of medical alcohol from the edge of the table without Haruno noticing, which he stubbornly failed to do. Having received an encouraging parting word, and a disgruntled whisper to the side, Uchiha clutched a bouquet of already red roses in his hands and trudged home, trying to guess what awaited him this time. Great. Now he wants oranges. And he looks like him in his orange robe. The main thing is not to say it a second time, otherwise he'll get it again. Trying not to fall asleep, the brunette dragged himself to the nearest 24-hour store, where they were already used to his visits at any time of day or night. Deciding that a box of orange citrus fruits would be enough to start with, Sasuke dragged it home, but halfway there he regretted not taking the cart the seller offered him. Hey, Cheburashka, here are your oranges. The brunette shouted, opening the front door with his foot. To his surprise, Naruto didn't run out to greet him and snatch the box from his hands, but suspicious chomping could be heard from the kitchen. Imagine his surprise when he saw Uzumaki destroying the entire supply of tomatoes. But you can't argue with a starving man, he had to watch with tears in his eyes as the blonde wolfed down the last ones with gusto. Well, at least it was healthy food. 9 month. Everything was going too smoothly and Sasuke even became scared. Hysterics were repeated every 3 days, as if on schedule, and the rest of the time Naruto was absolutely calm and quietly and peacefully knitted booties on the advice of Tsunade, or maybe she just decided to laugh at him? Then he switched to bonnets, but the last straw was the appearance of frills on the Uchiha's uniform. Then Sasuke ran headlong to the fifth, who kept sighing about how they wouldn't let her retire. The sixth was on maternity leave, and she was bored with working as Hokage again. In response to questions about what was happening to Naruto, he received "Listen, isn't he getting on your nerves? Then enjoy and wait for the birth," and a flick on the forehead, which threw him out the door. I wonder if the fifth knew that she literally prophesied what happened that very evening? No one was particularly surprised when this strange couple showed up at the hospital, and Uzumaki had only one question, despite the pain that was bending him over. How am I going to give birth? Well, I guess I'll have to have a cesarean, Haruno shrugged. It is not known which of the young men turned paler, but both fainted. Uchiha was laid on a waiting bench by the door, and with Naruto it turned out great, no anesthesia was needed. As a result, when Sasuke woke up, he saw Asuma next to him, who, as always, was still smoking a cigarette. And what about me? Kurenai sent me, the man answered immediately, not letting Uchiha ask, support the future father. AAA. I see, was all that Sasuke could say, still not having recovered from the shock. Half an hour later, the door opened and a joyful Sakura flew out. She snatched the cigarette from Asuma's hands and shoved it into the teeth of the Uchiha, who didn't understand anything. Well, congratulations, Sasuke. You've become a father. Part 5. Repeat what you said? Uchiha choked on his cigarette butt. Are you a complete idiot? Rejoice, Daddy. And who do I have? I bet you can't guess? Yes, I will swallow Kusanagi if it turns out that it is not a girl, as the doctors promised. Well, Haruno chuckled, get ready to swallow. Sakura grabbed his hand and pulled him into the room. Indeed, the doctors were wrong. On the bed lay an exhausted but absolutely happy Naruto, clutching to his chest. Twins, as he kept saying. Well, is there at least one girl? Sasuke asked pleadingly. No, both boys. I told you I know better. So, where did I leave Kusanagi? Uchiha said thoughtfully, turning to the door. Hey, why does he need a katana? Naruto looked at Haruno with confusion. Well, he probably lost, and now he's going to swallow it. What? Hey, come back. Do you want to leave me a widow with babies in my arms? He shouted at the back of his departing husband, to which he stood for a couple of seconds in thought, and then turned around. Well, if that's the case, then I'll have to be known as a person who doesn't keep his promises, Sasuke said to Sakura with feigned sadness in his voice. In response, she folded her arms across her chest and turned away, pretending to chuckle. The kunoichi herself was thinking that in Konoha, everything was different from what people had. Tsunade, who had been standing to the side and finishing off an open bottle of rubbing alcohol, suddenly came to life and, walking up to the brunette, grabbed his cheeks and stretched them, making some semblance of a smile. Why are you so lifeless? At least go and look at the children. With his heart skipping a beat, Uchiha came closer. It was the first time he had ever seen a newborn child, and so he had mixed feelings. Was he once such a baby? Although raising two children at once would be somewhat problematic, but Tsunade had warned about that. But wait, does that mean he is a father twice? Or does two at a time not count? In general, there were so many thoughts and they were jumping so madly that the brunette almost felt dizzy, and all this happened 2 steps before Naruto and the children. The twins behaved calmly and seemed not to even notice the commotion around them. The dark-haired kid clearly had his features, and although Sasuke didn't know what he looked like when he was very little, he thought he wasn't much different. The fair-haired one was an exact copy of Naruto, even the stripes on his cheeks were exactly like Uzumaki's. Who said that the children would look like their father? He was right. So, while Uchiha was somewhere in the clouds, he didn't even notice that Naruto had been tugging at his hand for a long time. Judging by his kawaii face, he was going to beg for something. Sasuke, I have one request, just don't laugh, but promise to fulfill it. For you, a cat is anything. Bring me a razor immediately. Why do you need it? Shave your legs. You don't shave your legs. But I dreamed about this my whole pregnancy. Granny Tsunade, convince him. The blonde turned to the woman standing next to him. You have to understand me. I couldn't see my legs because of my belly, like you can because of your breasts. Five still didn't understand whether it was a compliment or not, and so she decided not to get involved in the argument and quietly left under Sasuke's screams that those 8 months that he had been fussing over Naruto like a rotten egg had passed, and he would no longer allow himself to be ridden on. Of course, I really like watching your family squabbles, Haruno, who was still present in the room, quipped, but think about the children. And really, how did they get so carried away? Sasuke, what should we do? We couldn't even choose a name for one of them, Uzumaki asked, looking first at her husband, then at the children. So it will be pure improvisation. Then this is how it is, since the eldest is like me, then his character will definitely be like mine and his name should also be bright, energetic. Let it be Toshi. Good. And the younger one, judging by everything, is quiet. I even know a similar name, the brunette smiled, how about Kyoshi? In general, the young fathers were beaming with happiness, and this picture even made Sakura's throat tighten with envy. With the thought that she still needed to talk to Lee, Haruno decided to pay him a visit right away, and not care that it was only 5 in the morning. On the way, she met Sai, who was rubbing his butt and was apparently in a hurry to get home. When asked where he had been, the young man replied that he was at Hinata's as always, and ran away before the kunoichi could ask why he was returning from Hyuga's at 7 in the morning, and with such a suspicious look. I wonder what Hinata had done to him. Anyway, Sakura was unlucky, because Lee hadn't been home for 2 days, and there was a note on the door that said, he's gone to Suna. I'll be back when Kazekage lets him go. He wasn't going anywhere, he wasn't going anywhere. 2 months had passed, and the couple had experienced all the joys of real family life with sleepless nights, wet diapers, and daily laundry. Speaking of laundry, after a week of Naruto whining, Sasuke, grudgingly, allocated money for a washing machine, and life became a little easier. In general, they lived and got along, until one fine evening there was an insistent knock on the door, as if someone was pounding on it, as if it were their own home. Uchiha muttered something and trudged off to open the door, not even bothering to put on a robe to cover his tomato-covered underpants. Well, he loves tomatoes, but all the heart-shaped ones are in the wash. Seeing a familiar silhouette in the doorway, he jumped back a meter, screaming, "Uee!" Yes, it was his older brother in person. My stupid little brother, you're finally a father. Itachi rushed towards Sasuke and hugged him like a bear. Just try to let me go, I'll shove Kusanagi up your ass. Sasuke resisted, his paternal instinct to protect his offspring awakening in him. Who are you going to shove this into? Naruto was indignant from the other room, otherwise, watch out, I might get convicted of murder in a domestic dispute. Oh, and you're here. I'm so glad. Itachi let go of his brother and, throwing his sandals at him to stop him, ran to Uzumaki. Seeing the children, he immediately became touched, looking at their half-asleep faces. Just be quiet, I've been singing lullabies to them for half an hour already, Naruto warned, continuing to rock the babies. What cute nephews I have. And this one is a spitting image of Sasuke, even his hair is the same. Give them here, you hapless parent. In short, Itachi took the children from Naruto, and literally 5 minutes later, in an incomprehensible way, they were asleep. And the elder Uchiha was smiling contentedly. How did you even manage to put them to sleep? Sasuke couldn't believe his eyes. Sharingan, brother, Sharingan. What? Just kidding, just kidding. The idea isn't bad. Hey Kitty, why are you fighting? It hurts. Kitty, this is hilarious. Why is this happening to me? I just wanted to revive the clan and some love. It was a rash statement, however. Naruto was very surprised by this statement. So you wanted to use me from the very beginning? No, that's not what I meant to say. Shut up both of you, or you'll wake up the children. Itachi calmed them. After a while, the boys were already sitting in the kitchen and Naruto was fussing around the guest, throwing disapproving glances at Sasuke, who was clenching his fists and was clearly not happy to see his brother. I wonder what needs to happen for the Uchihas to make peace? Realizing that Sasuke wouldn't dare kick him out without Naruto's permission, the elder Uchiha became very talkative and even began to give advice to, as he put it, the one who had already raised one capricious child. How dare you say such a thing? I haven't laid eyes on you for more than half my life. Sasuke exploded. What about our happy memories? Itachi was genuinely surprised. What other memories? Well, do you remember when you were 4 years old you were really afraid of the washcloth, and I had to convince you for a week that it wasn't a monster that was eating your skin off when you washed it? By the way, he turned to Uzumaki, has this phobia returned to him? Then came several hours of memories, which Sasuke considered the greatest shame of his life. The details of losing a sandal in a river, his first meeting with a dog, and his first word were described in vivid detail. There was also a story about how little Sasuke was stung by a bumblebee, and a huge lump appeared on his forehead, not to mention how more than a dozen unique scrolls were hopelessly ruined by colored pencils. As a result, the younger Uchiha seemed to have experienced childhood for the second time, and his hatred for his brother only grew stronger. Naruto, however, was not shy and laughed. There was no other way to describe it. Not paying attention to the seething Sasuke, Itachi continued to broadcast until a glass flew a millimeter from his ear. Naruto looked at his husband reproachfully, but he only chuckled vaguely. He was clearly about to send his brother away. Itachi, isn't it time for you to come? Your gay guy is probably already waiting for you. Ah, don't rub salt in my wound. The elder Uchiha began to wail. A month ago he ran away from me with some herring and left only slippers and an empty aquarium, the unfaithful halibut. Okay, how sensitive. Sasuke feverishly thought of something else to find fault with, and found it. Then why do you have someone else's hair on you? What hair? There is no hair. Do you take me for a fool? Or are you turning into a blonde? And these, Itachi removed several long blonde hairs from his shoulder and sighed with relief. Kami-sama, it's good that no one will find out that, despite the ban, he smuggled a cat into the organization, which, by the way, was the source of his recent troubles, increased hairiness. This is Deidara, the young man rolled his eyes dreamily. And who is she? Not her, but him. His partner was killed by your buddies, mine escaped, so the leader paired us. That is, united us into a team. Sasuke didn't even know what to answer and just stared at his brother. And what about me? The boy was sad, and I'm not made of iron either. You should have seen him. Only my character is wild, explosive in the literal sense. Stop. Your personal life doesn't interest me in the least. Get out of here and don't let me see you here again. Are you sure, little brother, that you won't need my help? I see that you are completely exhausted, and you clearly can't sleep at night because of your cat. It was a low blow. So, maybe I'll stay with you for a week or two? I want to go back to the village, closer to my family. To the land, so to speak. Stop hanging ramen on my ears. We're living pretty well as it is, and we don't need you. What if I take care of the children temporarily? Itachi must have said the magic words, because Sasuke instantly brightened up. A plan immediately formed in the younger Uchiha's head. And what a thought! All the advantages lined up in a neat little list, with 3 points at the top. 1. Free nanny. 2. The opportunity for both to work, which will have a positive impact on the budget of a young family. 3. Since the kids will be looked after, you can stop worrying and finally have sex, and not that pathetic shag during which Naruto constantly twitches and rushes things, worrying that something will happen to the kids during this time. Actually, this point was the first, but you need to first show the qualities of a family man, and not a man starved for sex. Itachi, I love you. You can start right now, and don't disturb us until the morning. With these words, Sasuke dragged Naruto with him into the bedroom, and it was not hard to guess that he would take advantage of the moment. Itachi, as the older brother, understood everything, but got nervous when the couple was a little late. A day later, Sasuke appeared from behind the door and crawled into the bathroom. Ignoring his older brother's question, "Did you fuck him to death there?" the young man disappeared behind the door and locked himself in. I wonder why Naruto was afraid to approach him for 3 days after that. So Itachi began to visit his relatives from time to time, and, in the end, Sasuke even began to wait for his visit, because every time the children stuck to their beloved uncle, leaving their parents alone. Time passed, the kids grew up, and every day they brought joy, or even puzzled their dads. Just look at their first words. Come on, say something. Please. Naruto tried this way and that to persuade Kyoshi to speak, but he sat there with such an expression as if he was thinking about something. Son, come on, say, Papa, Papa, he drawled. Mother. What? Mom, Kyoshi repeated joyfully, looking at Naruto with eyes full of happiness. Can you blame a child for this? Sasuke. What did you call me in front of the children? Sasuke was probably luckier in this regard, because at least he wasn't called Mom. Xiaolingan. Xiaolingan, Toshi stated, poking his finger into Sasuke's eyes. What a joy, at least one of them has my intelligence. It's a pity he won't have Xiaolingan. In general, the spouses soon got used to the fact that life would no longer be as relatively calm as before, because in the new life there was an undeniable plus, or as Sasuke sometimes said, as many as two. When the children grew up a little and it was time for Uzumaki to return to the post of head of the village, he sometimes left a shadow clone to help the hired nanny, because it was almost impossible to cope with the children alone. Only Itachi, who often visited them, managed to do this. If Toshi, despite his resemblance to Naruto, was already calm at 3 years old and could sit for hours and look at pictures and books, play with construction sets or cubes, then Kyoshi inherited an irrepressible nature and could not even sleep peacefully, as if he was tearing himself apart for two. It was because of him that he had to hide all fragile things higher up and even switched to plastic dishes for a while, because everything that could break or disassemble, when it fell into Kyoshi's hands, soon lost its integrity. With age, the problems became more and more numerous, and stupid situations occurred more and more often. What was the cost of such an unexpected question for Naruto from Toshi, when the twins were already 5 years old? Why don't we have a mother, but only 2 fathers? To say that the blonde was shocked is to say nothing. We were going to tell you this later, but the thing is, I'm your mother in a way, the nervous daddy said somewhat unconvincingly. And I read that a male cannot give birth. Male? That was the only thing that came to Uzumaki's mind to ask. Yes. Here is a book about animals. Everything is written here. Then in our case it's Sasuke. And yet, Dad, how could you? Well, I can do a lot of things. But why be modest? I can do everything. And you can do everything because you are Hokage? Naruto hesitated, to some extent, yes. Yes, Toshi clearly took after Sasuke in intelligence. He reads books, while Kyoshi tears them up, and that's how he knows how to put Uzumaki in an awkward position. The boy looked at his father with a suspicious look and laughed, muttering something from which Naruto realized that Sasuke had explained things more interestingly. And how will we have to explain everything to children in detail in a few years? And now the twins are already 6 years old, and they are already dreaming about going to the ninja academy. Kyoshi has learned to stealthily steal equipment from the top shelf of the closet, and has already been seen more than once not only with kunai, but even with kusanagi. After that, Sasuke hid the katana in the safe, but this did not dampen the ardor of his little copy. And now, warming himself on the porch one fine day, he and Uzumaki wondered where their little devil had gone this time, while Toshi was sitting in plain sight and reading. Kyoshi had not been seen anywhere for 2 hours, and the dads were starting to worry. When it was decided to start searching, the boy himself appeared, emerging from the bushes under the window. Ignoring the gate and the indignant cries of his parents, this little miracle winked at his dads with his Sharingan, and with just one, and flew over the fence with a joyful squeal. Well, it's time to prepare the first aid kit. Because, apparently, his life principle was to give himself bumps every day. It looks like we made a little mistake when we chose their names, Naruto smiled, already calmly looking at his husband. Yes, that was a bit of a mismatch. But now we are convinced that character does not depend on appearance, Sasuke answered and reached for her husband's lips, catching another moment of happiness. Unfortunately, their kiss didn't last even half a minute before the sixth sense, trained over the years, sounded the alarm. Wait, did you hear? Naruto suddenly perked up, breaking away from the Uchiha. No, but I smelled it. Sasuke answered panickingly. Kyoshi. Matches again? No, this time it looks like. Kato.